The Silastic 300 is the first round of the Australian Endurance Championship, and endurance could be the key word because 155 laps of Amaroo Park probably makes this the toughest race on the driver in Australia. Terry Shiel has pole position in his Mazda RX7. In order to cope with the heat and so on, he has this special air vent strapped to the side of the car and through the window so he can get air in the car. He sits in a seat that's specially tailored to hold him in place and withstand the great cornering forces. He has a special roll cage just in case things go wrong, including special protection on the side in case a car comes through there. And he's sitting here with the race about to start with maybe a million thoughts in his mind. Terry, what's it feel like to be on pole with such an important race about to start?
It's very pleasing, Evan.
You don't get nervous?
I think you get nervous for every race, whether pole position or whatever, but it's certainly nice to be on pole position.
Barry Jones took away your lap record last time. Can you get it back, and are you going to have to travel at speeds below the lap record to stay in front of this hot field?
I think it'd be very difficult to get it back in a race like this. We're starting on full tanks of fuel and harder compound tyres, so I doubt if we can, but I still think the pace is going to be very, very quick.
Now, most of them have nominated two drivers. You're going on your own. Is that an advantage or is that going to be a disadvantage? Because it is a gruelling race.
I think you might have to ask me that at the end of the day. If I'm still standing all right, it'll be okay, yeah.
The car's good?
Very good. No problems at all.
Terry Shiel, a specialist here at Amaroo Park. You haven't got the money, though, to go the full round. It must make it frustrating for you when you know you can beat people who are doing so well in the Australian series.
It is a little bit frustrating, but I've spoken to my sponsor, Eurocars, and we're working on a few things for next year, which might see a big difference.
Right. Terry Shiel, one of the two Mazda RX7 drivers on the front row of the grid. In just a moment, I'll be going down the grid, and we'll be speaking to the man who'll be carrying the camera car that'll bring you right into the action, Allan Grice. That's just in a few moments. In the meantime, back to you, Garry Wilkinson.
Thank you, Evan. Yeah, Terry Shiel, still running the 12A engine, not the 13B that is allowed, the supposedly more powerful engine under the new touring car regulations. Still in all, there he is, on pole with a 52-1.
He's called the king of Amaroo, and for good reason. A lot of drivers don't like coming to Amaroo because they find they have to put their reputation on the line. And a few of them have been frightened to death by Terry Shiel, who has a habit of being able to get around this circuit better than most. Good to see the dealer team here today with Peter Brock and John Harvey. They obviously know that the going is going to be tough here at Amaroo because they have home track specialists. However, they're starting down on the grid just a little bit. Not the place that we normally see for Peter Brock, keeping in mind he's only had a minimal practice here with the bigger wheels on the car here on Friday, and had problems then, Garry.
Yes, he did. They found that the wider rims were only being held on by about 4 threads by the wheel nuts, and Peter wasn't too comfortable when they discovered that, and they had to do a little impromptu engineering here at trackside just to get more bite on the lock nuts, and he's feeling a lot happier now, but it did cost them a little bit of preparation time. But of course, that's why they're here. That is why they're here. With these new regulations, there are so many things to work out, and they can't really afford to miss a race.
Let's go back to Evan Green and Allan Grice.
Allan Grice will be taking you around the circuit with a camera in the car. Allan, you're the first V8 on the grid, the first Commodore. But does the thought of having the camera alongside you worry you at all? Is it an advantage or a disadvantage, or how does it affect you?
Well, I ran it a couple of years ago at Bathurst, as you know, and it wasn't a problem there, but there's a lot more straights and places to sort of think about something else. This circuit, of course, in these sorts of cars is very, very busy, and we'll just have to play it by ear and see how it goes.
You've got the two little Mazdas in front of you. Can you beat them round here?
It's going to be very, very hard, but I don't think you've ever seen me throw the towel in, Evan, have you?
Never indeed, Allan Grice. Let you get out on your warming up lap, and back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan Green. Make sure that the microphone cord doesn't go for the ride with Allan Grice. STP, stomp the pedal. That's Allan Grice, and you can expect him to get off the grid very, very quickly indeed. Let's have a look now at the grid. How they'll line up for the Silastic 300 here this afternoon at Amaroo Park. From pole position, the king of Amaroo, New South Wales top. RX7 driver, Terry Shiel. He'll be starting on pole. Car number 41, Barry Jones, start out of position number 2. The first of the Nissan Turbos, car number 55, Jorge Fury from 3. Car number 6, Allan Grice in the STP Commodore from position 4. from position number 5, ironic, number 05 is Peter Brock. From position 6, car 15, Terry Finnigan. From position 7, car number 56, Fred Gibson, the second of the Nissan Turbos. From position 8 is car number 8, Garry Willmington. From position 9, car number 25, John Harvey. From 10, car number 28, Lawrence and Russell in the Commodore. From position number 11, Jim Richards and Frank Gardner in the BMW. And rounding up the top 12, Brian Callaghan and Barry Graeme in number 47, the Ford Falcon. So you have the top 12 on the grid. Still quite a few drivers back behind them, Gary Wilkinson.
Yes, another dozen back there, including big Amaroo with Mike Burgmann at the wheel, Tony Longhurst, the young Queenslander that has shown out to such great advantage in the Alpha Series, partnering him in that car. Peter McLeod, bad luck for him with the RX7. The Slick 50 RX7 had an engine blow up, a new engine, the 13B, here on Friday, and having already sold his old car, this is a brand new car, to a guy down in Canberra, had to zip down there overnight and borrow back the old 12A engine and put it in, and he's back there at the rear of the grid.
A field of 6 RX7s, 7 Commodores, 2 Falcons, 2 Bluebirds, 2 Capris, 1 BMW, 1 Audi, 1 Escort, 1 Camaro. Makes a field of 23 starters, 155 torturous laps around the Amaroo Park Raceway. That's the Silastic 300. It's upcoming shortly as the drivers move off in the second of their warm-up laps.
Mentioning Mike Bergman in the big Camaro, one of the long-time exponents in Camaros, Ron Dixon, is in the race but has made the big switch to the RX7. He's in car number 21. Bob Stevens, his co-driver. Bob has prepared the car, also running the 13B engine. And it'll be interesting to see how he goes in the much more compact machinery.
There's number 55, Jorge Fury, starting from position number 3 on the grid.
First time here since this race last year, I think, Mike.
Yes, was running strongly last year, came into contact with Allan Grice and hit the guardrail, and Howard Marsden towed it away, and it wasn't to complete the race. But what a great job he's done for Nissan, and what a great job Nissan have done, in fact, for Australian motorsport.
They are, in fact, one of the few makes that haven't really benefited from the changes. They have no changes to the car, but what they do have is the experience of 12 solid months racing, and they're a lot faster here this year than they were last year. Jorge Fury comes from down the Albury way. He's a farmer there, but he and particularly his teammate Freddie Gibson know this circuit well. This is where Nissan do their testing, so you can jot this team down as one who really knows their way around Amaroo Park. The same with Terry Finnegan, who'll be running alongside him in the Commodore. Garry Willmington, who's leading the Falcons, back in 8th place. He knows the circuit very well, and of course we mustn't forget Allan Grice, who lives here, so he knows Amaroo Park well.
Well, I guess for you folk watching around Australia, the Silastic 300 today, take your pick. Is it going to be an RX7, Commodore day, or the Ford's going to bounce back? Or is the BMW starting to make an emergence again into motorsport, going to take line on us?
BMW's back in 11th spot, but speaking to Frank Gardner earlier today, I was told that the changes to that car, with its now 24-valve cylinder head, that is 4 valves per cylinder, gives it not only about 50 horsepower extra, but some changes to the suspension, have accounted for lap improvements of around 2 seconds per lap. So forget the fact that it's back in the 11th spot, that black, rather menacing looking shape back there. It could be well and truly up among the leaders towards the finish of the race. They've got 155 laps to go, and that should suit the BMW. The starter looked at his flag, counting off the last remaining seconds.
First Falcon is back on the 4th row, car number 8 in 8th spot, Garry Willmington and Will O'Brien in the Falcon.
This is round 1 of the Manufacturers Endurance Championship, the Silastic 300. The flag is down, they're racing, and it's Shiel and Barry Jones, with Jones winning the start, Shiel dropping into second, Allan Grice moving up on the outside, Jorge Fury, and there's Grice straight up on the outside of Terry Shiel, and looks for second as they go over the top and drop down into Dunlop Loop. And Grice, in fact, may have done it. Shiel nibbles away, but Grice comes from 4th into 2nd as they go through Dunlop Loop with Barry Jones out in front.
Well, Grice knew the start was important, and that was sheer aggression. He got up alongside Shiel. He just muscled his way in and said, if you want to take second place, you'll have to hit me. And he went through, and he's in 2nd spot, where he'd like to be. And now he's after the leader. And look at Grice, nibbling on the outside, probing on the inside. 154 and a half laps to go, and Allan Grice is driving like a sprint.
Peter Brock up into 4th spot behind Jorge Fury. Something adrift on Willmington's car too as he goes down by the lake for the first time.
They They come out of the corner sideways as Barry Jones. Grice closes up on the inside. He goes for the bite and will lead the first of 155. Circuits with the tail right up against the guardrail. Across the strike, it's Grice with race cam up in front, leading the Silastic 300.
And look at Brock coming on the outside. That's him under the toes of the spectators, and Brock in one daring manoeuvre has come through to third spot. 2 places in one manoeuvre. They didn't see him coming. He passed Fury, he passed Shiel, who was leading at the start. He's back now in, what, 5th place, and Brock is up in 3rd, and he said, OK, Allan Grice, if you can get up there, let me have a go and see if I can do the same.
I bet you Alan Moffat is enjoying this, watching it at home today. Down into the left-hander, and we pick up on Allan Grice in number 6, the STP Commodore. Second is Barry Jones in the Darrell Lee 41 car. Back into 3rd is Peter Brock in the 05. They were then followed by George Fury. Terry Shiel is the next one through, and Terry Finnigan. A great race this as they come across the strike next time for 2 laps down and only 153 to go.
Terry Shiel back in 5th place, followed by Terry Finnegan, and then Garry Willmington in the Ford with some problem with the bodywork. There goes Grice up the hill, really steaming. Barry Jones under big threat now from Peter Brock as they come over the top.
Well,
Fury.
Brock is in an aggressive mood. Garry, no doubt about it. That manoeuvre there early on, he really shows he wants to get up front. He's got the new bigger wheels, 12 inches wide at the back, 11 inches wide at the front, carrying the same rubber as before, but putting the power down better because the tyre is better profile. And Brock says, I've had enough of these Mazdas showing me the way to go. This is the man I've got to pass. Barry Jones, he won last year. Brock would like to get by him fairly early on. Doesn't want to hang around. He particularly doesn't want to see Allan Grice draw away from him. And Grice certainly is opening up a little bit of a lead. Only a few centimetres at a time, and he's pulling out there. Grice leads. Jones, who won last year, second. Peter Brock next, then George Fury, then Terry Shiel. A nice mixture of cars. They've got Commodore, RX7, Commodore, turbocharged Bluebird. All up in the front runners.
One pleasing factor is to see, in fact, Terry Shiel and Barry Jones get off the grid together today, because in the past so many of their clashes have been ruined, really, by one driver having problems right on the starting line. They're in there in the top 6. There's Jones running in 2nd at the moment, perfectly positioned behind Allan Grice. Peter Brock in number 05, back in the 3rd spot. Down to Honda corner again, left-hander. Grice doing a good job. Out in front, he's managed to take the lead away from the Mazdas at this stage on their home turf. Brock holding a good 3rd. Right behind him is George Fury, keeping them all honest. And next is Terry Shiel, 100 metres then back to Terry Finnegan, and then daylight back to John Harvey. Here they come across the strike again. STP up front. Allan Grice carrying our race cam. We'll give you pictures shortly as he goes up the hill, being tagged here by Barry Jones in the RX7, and Peter Brock just sitting back there comfortably in 3rd place at the moment, nibbling away at the RX7.
And Garry Willmington's car, which seemed to be dragging something, was in fact, it was the bumper bar. He's back in the race. Well, we seem to have reached the stage of the race where the teams are just settling down a little bit. The first couple of nervous laps are over. Grice is in front, Jones is 2nd, Brock is 3rd, Fury's next, then Shiel, and they've settled down to that sort of order just to see what happens. They've got a long way to go. They're getting their pit signals now, telling them what's happening. And Allan Grice in the lead.
And let's have a look inside the car with race cam as Allan Grice comes down into Wonderlick corner and makes the turn. Here we go, the right-hander into the main straight, and you're in the car with Allan Grice here at Amaroo Park.
Here we come across the strike again. Allan Grice in the number 6 STP car. Just look at the crowd off to the left, heading up Bitchapay Hill. You probably noticed the little sign down there on the dash says Elvis. And Allan claims his car has probably had more hits than Elvis in its racing career. Down into Dunlop Loop, through the ever-tightening right-hander. And a perfect position now for Allan Grice as he leads the first round of the Manufacturers' Championship for Holden.
Grice, Barry Jones, Peter Brock, George Fury, that's the order, then Terry Shiel, Terry Finnegan, and that is car 31, the BMW, Jimmy Richards at the wheel, sneaking up. He's in about 7th spot at the present time, in fact he is. It's Peter Brock, 05, George Fury, right on his hammer.
Here's John Harvey and Jim Richards have both made up ground. So we'll watch that a little later. That's the pit shot. Well, Grice has the race under control at the moment. He's not drawing away anymore from Jones, but he's maintaining his lead. Jones is drawing very hard. If you thought he wasn't, watch the way he goes around the corners. Grice is taking lines which are designed to conserve the tyres. He's straightening out the corners as much as he can, but Jones behind him is nibbling a bit more, cutting in, just trying to gain a few centimetres here, a few centimetres there, just to whittle back that lead. He hasn't got the same power as the big V8 in the Commodore. Can't quite match him up the hill. He has to do it on the corners. Watch the way they corner here. Grice will take a wider line. And the little Mazda nips inside as Jones tries to make up ground. He knows he's got a lighter car, knows he'll be lighter on his rubber. But Grice, like all the Commodores, have wider wheels now, and they're putting the rubber more firmly on the road, and they shouldn't have the same tyre wear problems that have hampered them for the rest of the season. But Jones certainly has made up ground with some very vigorous cornering in that last lap.
Horsepower now along the straight up Bitchapave Hill, and the Commodore showing out well here as Allan Grice behind the wheel of the 6th car goes up to the top of Bitchapave Hill, drops down into Dunlop Loop. Barry Jones and the Darrell Lee RX7 is in 2nd spot. Peter Brock is in 3rd, and there's more motor racing action in the Silastic 300 when we return to Amaroo Park. Welcome back to Amaroo Park and the Silastic 300. No change in the positions. Let's have a look at the leading 5 on the scoreboard.
Top 5 on the track. Allan Grice in car 6. The STP Commodore is the leader. From car 41, the RX7 of Barry Jones. Then 05, Peter Brock in the Commodore. George Fury, car 55, the Nissan Turbo. And then Terry Shiel, car 37, the RX7. That's after 9 laps. And only 146 to go.
Already they're starting to lap cars. The first car to be passed was Chris Heyer in the German Audi. Then they went past the Kraft little Ford Capri. So already they're nibbling away, passing some of these smaller cars, and it's going to get hectic out there soon when they start getting into the bulk of the field. These two really are setting a cracking pace. Almost 10 laps completed. A little puff of smoke there as Grice just slightly locks up a brake. He won't want to do that too much because the tyre wear is the thing he has to avoid, but he is still maintaining his lead over the second man, Barry Jones, and Peter Brock about 50 metres behind him, 3rd place.
Brock having the same trouble too with a little lock up front left.
Perfectly positioned at this stage, Barry Jones, as they complete 10 of 155 circuits in the Silastic 300 from Amaroo Park. There's Grice, the sting of the V8 playing off as he goes up the hill. Jones closes there on the back part of the course. Grice doing it perfectly, runner-up in the CRC as it was known then. Fastest man at Bathurst last year and runner-up spot there. So he's used to being a winner, and he's also used to playing bridesmaid.
Terry Shiel has pulled into the pits, so he's off the leader's board.
Bad luck that for Terry Shiel. We'll be covering the pit area activity for you. There's Terry Shiel coming into the pits. Obviously with a problem. As you recall, Terry spoke to Evan Green before the start of the race and determined that he would be going the full distance himself. Was running strongly up the hill for the first time, but then dropped off the pace back to about 6th or 7th.
It doesn't look too hopeful, Mike.
No.
They're not making any effort to do anything about the car, which suggests that the race is over for Terry Shiel. There is certainly no hurry to try and fix anything. They're chatting to the driver, pushing him, and I think they're swinging him round behind the pit area into the garage. Still passing cars. It looks like the Seton car just being lapped then by the yellow one by Grice. Jones trying to fight his way through
as well. As they go through on the back straight, Allan Grice doing it well in traffic. One part of motor racing that Grice certainly enjoys, and that's the passing.
Well, they'll be doing plenty of it in this race because with a field of 24 cars and one of the shortest racetracks in Australia, full of corners, they'll be having a busy afternoon here at Amaroo Park. A warm day too. A lovely, clear, sunny day, as you can see, with a huge crowd. Look at them lining on the left-hand side of the circuit as you go around with Allan Grice in the car leading this race, the STP Commodore. Down past the start-finish line. Past the TV position. Up Bitchapave. He's got a car ahead, but look at the way he catches this car because he's about to lap him. And this is the difference between the man leading the race and one of these smaller cars about to be overtaken. It's a Capri by the look of the tail, taking the same sort of line as Grice. Grice now coming in, and he'll swoop down on him as they come towards Mazda corner. This is where you take a deep breath and hope you're taking your dose of bravery pills, because this is a frightening part of the circuit. Flat as a strap in 4th gear. Well, there's Grice out on the track. Garry Willmington, in the meantime, has gone down in the pits to see what happened to Terry Shiel. Over to you, Garry.
gave up on it, and it's just expired.
So what's the future now for you?
Well, Eurocars and myself are we're getting something together with a bigger engine pretty soon, so I think you'll find by the time Sandown and Bathurst rolls around, we'll be right.
Well, let's hope so. Garry Shiel, what a disappointment for him. He's been top man here at Amaroo, but an engine blow-up has put him out. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Gary. Well, back in the Grice car. Bad luck for Terry Shiel and Allan Grice, still leading the race, still in that difficult stage of the race where he's starting to pick off cars for the first time. Once the driver's been lapped once or twice, he's ready for it. But in the early stages, they're so immersed in their own little private duels with other cars that they sometimes are greatly surprised when someone gets by. But Grice is catching up to the cars in front. He's got the Burgmann Camaro in front. That's a powerful car, and could take a bit of passing. This is the car that will be co-driven by the young Queensland driver, Tony Longhurst. Mike Burgman and he have teamed up for Bathurst. Their first outing together. The big Chevy Camaro, though, no real match here for Allan Grice. It may still have the legs up the straight, but he pulls over and lets Grice through, and that's it. He's knocked off the big Chev, and Grice goes up and over the top of the circuit. And the man behind him, last year's winner, Barry Jones.
There's Barry Jones coming on the inside of Bergman as we show the RX7 driver going through Dunlop Loop. Grice still the race leader with 14 completed laps. Jones in the second spot. Peter Brock is third. Next is Jorge Fury. One in trouble, though, is the Citizen Commodore down in Camalco corner.
Ken Matthews and Greg Topher were to have driven the car in the race. Matthews, I think, would have started off. He was nominated at the start. He's parked the car, and it doesn't look as though they're going to take any further part in the race. This year, the Silastic 300 is the opening round of the Australian Endurance Championship. A number of rounds, including Bathurst, the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst on October the 2nd. It's the long distance series of races, as distinct from the races for the driver's title, the National Touring Car Championship, won this year by Alan Moffat in the Mazda RX7. It's the first time also we've seen cars in their new guise with the bigger engine Mazdas, as exemplified by Barry Jones, the 13B motor. As he was saying to you, though, he wasn't that impressed by the new motor in its initial performance, Mike.
No, he seemed more irritated that the rules had been changed halfway through a season that had forced everyone to go chase that cubic dollar again. He didn't particularly feel that it was required, seeing that the 12A motor had been more than good for the majority of the RX7 competitors, and all they've really done was made a very good car faster.
Yes, a number of drivers were upset that Mazda got the bigger engine. They thought, well, Moffat won the series this year, the driver series. What's it going to mean in terms of their performance? Well, they're not leading at the moment. Barry Jones knows how to drive one of these around Amaroo as quickly as anyone. He holds the lap record, and a lot of people have tried here to see how quickly they can drive around this circuit, including Alan Moffat and Peter Brock and Dick Johnson, all the greats of Australian touring car racing, and Barry Jones has been fastest, so that's an example of how good he is here, and he's coming second behind the man whose blue and red car you may just have seen disappear out of camera range as he prepares to try and lap one of the slower Commodores and set off in pursuit of the leader. The Commodore pulls over for him, lets him go through. 58 is Andrew Manson.
Allan Grice, 40 years of age, second last year in the James Hardy 1000, and this year teaming with Colin Bond, who won Bathurst 14 years ago in a Holden Monaro, and we might see Colin Bond stepping in for the second stint in the STP number 6 car halfway through today's race.
Some teams have elected to go with just the one driver. Terry Shiel was one, Jorge Fury another. Others have elected to have two drivers. Peter Dane will go with Barry Jones. He'll take over when Barry comes in to refuel, maybe change tyres, seeing how the rubber is wearing. Allan Grice has Colin Bond, as Mike said, and Peter Brock, the fellow we're following now, has Larry Perkins, his Bathurst co-driver, with him for the race this year. Larry helps in the preparation of the car. I was speaking to Peter before the race started and asked him what effect the new changes to the rules have had as far as his Commodore was concerned. He pointed out he's not allowed to do all the changes so far. They're being brought in piecemeal, and all he can run at the moment are the wider tyres, 2 inches wider at the back as far as the wheels are concerned, out to 11 inches. They're a Formula 1 Italian Momo wheel that he's running, and 11 wide wheels at the front, same tyres but bigger rubber. Not allowed to increase the wheel arches, which gives him something of a problem in fitting the bigger wheels inside the existing arches. But he reckons the changes are worth maybe half a second a lap to him. But the car will be better, it will be quicker when the other changes allowed under the rules are brought in progressively, until by Bathurst this car, which won last year, or the same make, not the same car of course, should be ultra competitive. Peter Brock going for what, his 6th win will it be, if he does it again this year?
Grice was holding a 1.2. That's already opening up. And still back to 1.7 to Peter Brock behind number 41, of course, Barry Jones.
What a great career Peter Brock has had. What a remarkable touring car driver he is. A shame in some ways he didn't go overseas and try himself out against some overseas drivers. He is absolutely world class. You can see his record in the big races. He wins them. Bathurst, the touring car championship 3 times. The Sandown 400, now known as the Castrol 400, 8 times. 8 times. He went once in a big trial, the Repco Round Australia Trial Rally. He won it. And he has twice won this race. He's running in 3rd place at the moment. A man who just doesn't make mistakes. He's a superbly disciplined driver, yet he has that rare combination of being able to go faster, to stir himself up to a supreme effort, and he has that elusive ingredient that so many really fast drivers lack, that is concentration. He just doesn't let his mind wander from the task, which is why he doesn't make mistakes.
Well, Peter Brock sharing the driver's seat today with Larry Perkins in the Silastic 300. We asked him would he like to do it solo, and he likened it to riding an exercise bike in a sauna for 3 hours. That's Peter Brock still running in 3rd spot and locking up a break as we have Jorge Fury starting to close up dramatically, and Fury now with the scent of moving up 1 spot in the field comes down on the inside as they head to the lake. So Peter Brock under siege here at the moment from the first of the Nissan Turbos driven by Jorge Fury.
Peter reckoned he'd have trouble keeping in front of the turbos. He thought they might be just a bit quicker around here. How this battle goes will resolve when we return to the action here at Amaroo Park.
Welcome back to Amaroo Park, and as you join us, it is Jorge Fury, number 55, just going through to take away 3rd spot from Peter Brock. And he has the same problems that Brock was encountering just before we left to go to that break.
Might be suggesting that Fury is driving a little harder than he would like to, just to maintain that 3rd spot, Mike.
Could be. Let's take a look now at the top 5 in the Silastic 300. After 22 of 155 circuits, Allan Grice leads the field in the Commodore. In 2nd spot is Barry Jones of the RX7, 55 Jorge Fury in the Turbo Bluebird. Then comes Peter Brock in the dealer team Commodore, and Terry Finnegan in car number 15, the 3rd of the Commodores in the top 6.
Well, a great scrap going on. Fury in the Turbo Bluebird got the signal to maybe just hurry up and stay within reach of the leading pair. Had several laps challenging away at Peter Brock. Just by the way the Brock's tail wriggled there suggests maybe he's having a little bit of a tyre problem. The car didn't seem to be as stable as one would expect around there, and Peter might have elected just to ease up a little bit and just save the rubber. A very canny driver, but this fella is going fast. You know, Jorge Fury, former national rally champion, was moved across by Howard Marsden, who runs the Nissan team, to see what he was like as a racing driver, and there are the results. He is a top-class racing driver. The most unlikely candidate for being a champion contender, because he's the original mild-mannered farmer. Wears glasses, usually wears a floppy hat, very quiet. If you were to line up a group of people and include Jorge Fury and say, right, pick the racing driver, George will be the 10th out of 10 that you choose. But look at the way he goes.
Sort of a Clark Kent.
Yes, he just lacks the phone box, but he's a real dab in a school bus. He drives that once a week, takes the kids around the area just to the east of Albury, where he has his farm, to school and back. But the rest of the time, he either looks after his cattle and his sheep, or he drives this car for the Nissan team.
And doing well. The Bluebird engines have really not had a problem. In fact, a ton of stamina. It's the turbochargers that have given them some problem over the past few years. They've blown 44 in the case of since 1981. We'll have a look at some statistics on Jorge Fury, though.
There he is. I first met George when he was a rally driver. Won the championship twice in 1970 and in 80. You can see his record in the Southern Cross, which is a great rally. Not a great deal on racing because he's fairly new to the scene 2 years ago. But as you can see, the farmer from Talmalmo, just near Albury, is a top-class driver, whether it be in rallying or in racing. We saw that Peter Brock had gone from racing to rallying in the days of the Repco and won that. Well, here's a man who went the other way around. Or there was a man, Jorge Fury. And this is the fellow they're trying to catch. The leader still in the STP car, Allan Grice. He now leads from 41, which is the Barry Jones RX7, and then 55, the Jorge Fury Bluebird. They're the leading 3. Peter Brock bringing up the 4th place. The race, the Silastic 300. Silastic, the sponsors, it's a silicon-based new brake fluid they've introduced. Quite a few of the drivers trying out this new product in the race. It's a way of proving a product, just as James Hardy ran the Hardy Ferodo to prove brake pads, so was Silastic, putting their product to the test under the most severe conditions you can imagine. Racing around here, Amaroo Park, with all these corners and bends.
The series, of course, the manufacturers will decide both the champion make and the champion driver for 83 Enduros. 6 rounds in all. One at Oran Park upcoming. Then, of course, Sandown the 11th of September. Bathurst, of course, the principal event on the National Touring Car calendar is the James Hardy 1000. That's October 2nd. Covered exclusively by the 7 Network. And then, of course, 2 further rounds at Surfers Paradise in Adelaide. Here's a man that might take a lot of stopping come the James Hardy 1000. He was the fast man there last year for pole spot, and that's Allan Grice.
Talking of men stopping, Terry Ryan has stopped in the pits. He brought his Mazda RX7 in there for attention. We've had a couple of cars in there. John Craft, in fact, had a bit of a biff in his Capri. Also has gone into the pits just to check. He ran into a wall and knocked some stewards off their stand, which would have upset them in several ways. He's okay, the car's okay, but he's gone to the pits just to check and see what it's like. Grice is leading. I'd like to see the battle, by the way, Mike, between the BMW of Jim Richards and car 25. That's the second of the Holden dealer team cars, with John Harvey making a return to racing. They've been having a great scrap. They're just coming down now towards the lake corner on the far side of the circuit. Maybe half a lap behind this man, the leader. There's a view through the windscreen of Allan Grice's car. Well, it's a long race, it's a grueling race, and here's John Harvey, who knows what this sort of racing is all about. Car 56, by the way, into the pits. That's Freddie Gibson has brought the second of the Nissan Bluebirds into the pits. That's an unscheduled stop. Garry Willmington just leaving the pits as well, and out there on the circuit and making good time as we just cut to the Fury car. Was the second of the Holden dealer team cars. Let's go down to Garry Willmington and see what's going on in the pits and what has brought Fred Gibson in.
Fred Gibson in the pits.
What's happening down there, Garry?
Nissan turbos, and let's find out what the problem is. Fred, what's the problem?
I've got a boost leak somewhere, Garry, and I've got no boost pressure at all. But we'll see if we fix the leak. If I can, I'll stop the car now. But it's only running 1.2 bars of boost, and we normally run 1.6.
Okay, turbo problem for Fred Gibson in the first of the Nissan cars, but George Fury still out there and circulating. Back to you, Mike.
There we can see mechanics still working on the Nissan Turbo. So we pick up on John Harvey, second driver in the dealer team Commodores. John coming up over the top and dropping down into Dunlop Loop.
Jim Richards has been closing up the gap between his car and the leading Holden. He's quick round the top of the corner of the circuit, as you can see there, in the superlative looking black BMW, now running with the 24 valve cylinder head. That's 4 valves per cylinder. And it's a classic confrontation, a European thoroughbred against a really husky Australian. Car 41 into the pits, by the way. Jones has gone into the pits. The man who was coming second in the RX7 has gone into the pits as we follow this great scrap. Johnny Harvey still just staying in front of Jim Richards, and there's Barry Jones, was running second, has brought his RX7 into the pits. Discussing with his pit crew, nothing much happening at the moment. Doesn't look too good. If it's a simple problem, they get onto it quickly. They're still debating what to do. What's happening down there, Garry?
Barry Jones in the pits was holding down second place in the race. Now, we're not aware yet of what the problem is, but he has shut the car down. Let's see if we can find out what it is. Barry looking very disconsolate. Barry, what's happened?
We've got a fuel feed problem. We run all year on short distance tanks, and we put the long distance tank in, and now we've got a fuel feed problem. The car's going great. No petrol.
Fuel problem, no petrol. You can't win without that, Evan.
Right, well, a fuel problem, and there's no shortage of petrol as far as Jim Richards is concerned, and he just goes shooting through under brakes there and now gets in front of John Harvey. He had a race-long battle with him. They've completed 30 laps, the leader, so it's taken him 30 laps to get by. That's how long this battle has persisted. Now John Harvey will do his best to get past him because he doesn't like being passed by Jim Richards.
Well, a change in the race with Allan Grice still out in front leading. 3.5 seconds to George Fury, then 5.7 back to Peter Brock in the 0.5. Terry Finnigan the next on the grid. And then, of course, the JPS car coming up through the pack. You saw that pass there on John Harvey.
Frank Gardner is nominated as co-driver with Jim Richards in this race. Frank told me he won't be running in the race. Jim will go all the way by himself. Frank is driving at Bathurst. As he puts it, he's driving the lunchtime shift. which is rather, I think, demeaning the great driving ability of Frank Gardner. I know Frank, in testing cars in the past, has found he's just as quick as some of his race drivers, so it's a pretty sound move to put such a wise head in the car for Bathurst. But here, it'll be Jim Richards all the way, unless something happens and he does require someone to take over.
Coming down through the lake corner, and here's Jim Richards doing a good job as the BMW comes back, looking like a front runner of the James Hardy 1000. Let's take a look at some details on Jimmy Richards.
I first met him in New Zealand where he was a rally driver, and he was just sensational. In fact, in those days when I was with the BMC team, I tried to get him to come to Australia and join us, and he was a bit reluctant to leave his home, but the message must have taken a while to sink in because he finally made the change, came here and as a racing driver rather than a rally driver, and there's his record. Largely New Zealand, but as you can see at Bathurst with Peter Brock, he hasn't done badly, 3 victories, and among his peers he is regarded as being one of the outstanding drivers. A gentleman driver, very safe on the road, very quick, and maybe because of his background in New Zealand, absolutely sensational in the wet. Now, if it rains at Bathurst in October, and this car with this noted road holding could be really a chance for victory. As it is, it could certainly finish in the top 3. It's got another 50 horsepower this year with the changes to regulations which are allowed. The suspension has been changed so that it handles better. Compared to a Commodore now, it develops about the same horsepower. They're both up somewhere close to the 400 horsepower mark. It is only a couple of kilograms heavier than the Commodore. It'll be a bit quicker down the straight, maybe not so fast up the hills because of the fact that it doesn't have the great torque of the V8s. But we now have a BMW racing here that does have a chance of winning these races outright. And Jim Richards, in what is literally the shakedown run of this car, it's the first time it's raced properly.
I say being embarrassed here for an RX7.
You say, hey, what are you doing? I just passed you. Now he's got to do it all over again, but still, it's very much a trial run. They don't expect to win the race this time, the JPS BMW team, but Bathurst is the race they have their sights set on, and that could be an outstanding contender for honours in the James Hardy 1000. More action when we return to Amaroo Park and the Silastic 300.
Welcome back to Amaroo Park and the Silastic 300. Race leader is still Allan Grice, but this man, number 55, the little man, Jorge Fury, making up just a little bit of ground. We'll go through the top 5 for you shortly as we pick up on them completing one more circuit. 36 in all completed of the 155 here at Amaroo Park, the first round of the Endurance Championship.
There's no doubt, Mike, that he is catching the lead of Allan Grice. It was 2.7 seconds the margin a moment ago. You would have seen Grice's blue and red car flash by. I just timed at 2.1 seconds. So he's picking up at about half a second a lap. And at that rate, in a few laps' time, he's going to be right on the tail of the leader. So Fury really has the bit between his teeth and is going hard. You can see the margin now. He can see Grice there just in front of him. By the way, one fellow who is going exceptionally well is Peter McLeod. You remember we saw the black BMW of Jim Richards passed on the inside by an RX7, and I thought it was a car that had been lapped. It wasn't indeed. It was Peter McLeod who started from the rear of the grid, passing Richards. So McLeod is going very well in the Slick 50 car, and we'll be showing you his progress in just a few moments. But look at the fight for the lead. It's down to 1.9 seconds now.
Once again across the strike, heading up the hill. There's the gap between first and second. Allan Grice, Commodore of the fleet, up front. Number 55, Jorge Fury, gaining marginally on him. That gap was 2.5. It's now down to about 1.7 or 1.8. So not too much between them. And what a great effort it would be on the part of the Nissan team to come up with a win in the opening round of the Endurance Championship here today at Amaroo Park.
Well, they're about to catch and lap John Harvey. It's only a very short circuit, but no one likes being lapped. And John Harvey is about to experience that dubious honour. A bit of locking of tyres from both the leader and the man coming second. They are trying desperately hard. What's it like from the leader's position? Well, this is what it looks like as you catch a man of the abilities of Johnny Harvey in the second of the Holden dealer team Commodores. Well, he's got as much power because he accelerates away. Let's see where the difference lies, because Grice has made up the difference, 2 kilometres, to be ready to lap him. And here he goes on the inside. Oh, there's a difference there, and he goes flying up on the inside. This is where you take a big suck of the breath into the right-hand side of the circuit. John Harvey disposed of, and the leader still on his way, but he has a real battle behind him because only about 1.5 seconds behind. The view you can't see, and the view that Allan Grice can only see when he glances up into the mirror, which he doesn't have much time for that, is that of the second man, Jorge Fury. Right on his hammer now, no more than 4 or 5 car lengths behind. Grice through Honda. Uses up all the road, gets himself a quick line down the straight towards the right-hand bend, this sharp bend facing you. the hardest right-hander on the circuit. Uses up all the road, very close to the fence, gets a close-up view of the 7 signs, and that's a lap with the man leading the race, Allan Grice.
Okay, one car certainly doing well, as you mentioned before. The number 50 car that's making up some ground in the pack, and here he is right on the tail of Jim Richards is Peter McLeod. Up into about 6th spot, and he's made that from a long way back on the grid.
Ron Dixon into the pits, and Peter McLeod through past Jim Richards. Jim say, gee, where'd you come from? Well, the message, Jim. Oh, something's gone wrong, surely. No, whatever it was, may have been a misgear change, may just Jim Richards just sort of not like being passed. But the answer for Jim, in case he's still wondering, is the man came from the back of the grid. He didn't practice yesterday, blew up an engine comprehensively, one of the new 13B motors. Thought he was out of the race, did Peter McLeod. But he, in effect, decided he would try and get the engine from his old race car, went to Canberra to a fellow at Swiss Motors who'd bought it. The fellow was very kind. He said, yes, you can have the engine back. They worked until 4 o'clock, brought the car back to Bathurst, back to the start here, rather, through Bathurst, and here they are, having started from the back of the grid and now fighting his way through the field, and he is an incredible 5th place. That's what Peter McLeod has done, from the back of the grid to 5th place in just 40 laps. This man could still win the race, which would be an incredible feat.
He's done exceptionally well, as you mentioned, coming through the field after starting at the back of the field. The gap between 1st and 2nd is down to a second. It was 2.5. But Allan Grice in car number 6, the STP Commodore, still out in front, and closing on him is Jorge Fury, heading down to the lake corner. You can see from race cam as they come through the turn.
And Fury now is no more than 2 car lengths behind. That's the gap. That's the gap as they complete, what is it, 41 laps. Allan Grice will be well and truly aware of the margin, both from his own personal observations and from the signals from the pit. They're letting him know how many laps to go, where Fury is, what his times are. The mind has to go like a computer as you drive around. Not only do you have to drive quickly, change gear in the right place, brake at the set points, make sure the car's running well, keep your eye on the instruments, but work out how many laps to go, how hard you should go. Smell to see if there's a sign of burning rubber from the tyres. He's a busy fellow, is Allan Grice, and the man making him very busy is Jorge Fury. Right behind him now, you can see the margin. Fury braking very late. He must be confident about his tyres to be giving them that sort of caning in the braking. But it's a light car. He's a turbocharged motor. The only turbos in the race are the 2 Nissan models, 1.8 litres. They're giving away a lot in terms of capacity, but they are turbocharged, which means that they have exhaust gas-driven superchargers, or air pumps, in effect, to use a simple analogy, just to force feed the engine with fuel. And it gives it, as we found in Formula 1, more power than the conventional engines of twice the size. And that's what Allan Grice is learning. The fellow behind him with a small motor of 1.8 litres, less than half the size, certainly is going just as quickly. Well, Grice is busy. Taking a good line. He's so persistent. He takes a very wide line there, but he's found from years of experience that that is the quick way round. I wonder if we dare try and talk to him. He's got a handful of cars to be concerned about there, Mike, but maybe we can just raise him on the radio and see if he can tell us what's it like there in the car.
Allan Grice, can you hear us?
Well, he just got past. Wasn't a good time to ask him a question.
It wasn't all right, because straight snap on the inside went Jorge Fury on 55, and you saw it on race cam. Moving through very, very quickly indeed. Fury, who was sitting there waiting to strike. Now Jorge Fury, with the tail almost up against the wall, has gone through and now leads the Silastic 300.
It was Fury and Grice who came together on that corner last year. You saw it at the beginning of the program where they touched it. And Fury went backwards into the wall, did a lot of damage to the car. He's a mild-mannered fella. I went up to him with a microphone and says, what happened? And he looked at me, he blinked behind his glasses, scratched his hat and said, that wasn't the act of a gentleman.
Well, he took the only break, really, that came his way when Grice came through the corner, left a little gap there, and Jorge Fury was through, and now leads the Silastic 300.
So after 43 laps, it's Jorge Fury in front, and he is about to pass. In fact, he does pass, and under very severe braking, Jim Richards, who's running back in 6th place. So he's lapped all but the leading 5 cars, is Jorge Fury, who after 42 laps takes the lead in the Silastic 300. That's the way the top 5 are going. Peter Brock back there 14 seconds behind. but you can't knock him. That's not a big margin, and there are pit stops to come, and anything can happen when the cars go into the pits, and there's a lot of distance still to go. Terry Finnegan has made up a lot of ground, but the miracle drive so far is by Peter McLeod in the Slick 50 RX7, car number 50, from the last spot on the grid to be up there on the leaderboard. That's an incredible result, but this is the man they all have to catch, Jorge Fury.
And George, of course, like Terry Shiel, is planning on doing the solo today here at Amaroo Park. Comes down to on the corner again. Still a lot of traffic to contend with. They're putting laps on cars probably a little quicker than they thought.
Well, he's persisting in that brake lock-up. It's not his own fault. Obviously, there's maybe just some over-sensitiveness in the brake system to do that, but it will be just scruffing the tyres a bit. That's a puff of tyre smoke, and he'll be just flat spotting those tyres slightly. But it is a light car, not as disastrous as if it were a hard, heavy vehicle like one of the Commodores or the Falcons. We don't have Dick Johnson in today's race, a great shame. The only Queensland couple we have, in fact, are a pair, Barry Lawrence and Geoff Russell, in car number 28 driving a Commodore. They qualified 10th. But Dick Johnson isn't here. He didn't have his Falcon ready. We'll see it there for Bathurst, where it should be a front contender again. Jorge Fury still lapping cars. And only 5 cars now on the same lap. 55 Jorge Fury, 6 Allan Grice, 05 Peter Brock, 15, which is Terry Finnigan in the Commodore, and 50, the car that has come from the back of the grid, Peter McLeod in the RX7. They're the 5 who are on the same lap, led by this man, Jorge Fury.
Down to the lake again, and here is your race leader coming out of that corner. Up on the Ron Dixon, Bob Stevens RX7, making its competition debut here at Amaroo today in the Silastic 300. Ron Dixon, of course, remembered for his exploits in the big Camaro. Going through on the inside of him, though, is the turbo power of Jorge Fury. Gets back online as he drops into Dunlop Loop, and then Dixon goes through. Quite a nicely turned out car. First time on the racetrack here in the Silastic today.
He's had one visit to the pits, which has cost him more than a lap in time. But going quickly out there, he has been lapped. He's several laps behind now, but as you can see, it's one of the quick cars there. He's lost time in the pits, but he hasn't lost too much time on the track. Looks like Bob Stevens in the car at the moment. Bob Stevens, who really knows his way around here at the Amaroo track circuit. Specialising in sports sedans, one of the real old hands here in that sense. He's had years and years of experience, just kinking his head over and going hard. And Bob Stevens in a car like this will be a real handful. Could be a good pair at Bathurst, because the Mazdas are going to be real potential race winners, and you can never overlook someone like Bob Stevens and Ron Dixon together. They could be a formidable team for the James Hardy 1000. Bad luck they've had the pit stop, which has cost them time, but still a long way to go. 47 laps covered so far, but the total race distance is 155, so a long way to go, and a lot could still happen.
There's certainly going to be a lot of interest when a couple of these critical pit stops come up. Grice still sitting back in second spot, but the race leader is still Jorge Fury. Turbo power for the Nissan team. The Silastic 300 will continue when we return to Amaroo Park. Welcome back to Amaroo Park Raceway. The Silastic 300 continues, and in second place, only 2.8 seconds off number 55, Jorge Fury, is our old mate, Allan Grice. How's it going, Allan?
Well, I've seen it a bit better, Mike. We've got no rubber left in the front left. Pushing pretty hard. They don't handle too good on canvas.
You set a blistering pace for the first 20 or so laps.
Yes, I did. I did want to get away from the batch, but I also wanted them to earn it. If somebody's going to win the race, they should earn it instead of have it on the plate, don't you think?
Yes, and Allan, if the tyre feels as though it's worn to the canvas, how much longer will you stay out?
I'm going to try and stay out as long as I can, because I want to... You can probably see the vibration in the car there as it doesn't want to turn in. I'll stay out as long as I can without putting it in the wall, because I want to be able to get some tyres on and enough fuel to get home. I've certainly used up more rubber than I'd planned, but you this is the beginning of the long distance season. You've got to find these things out.
Are your pit crew keeping an eye to see how worn the tyre looks as you go past the fence?
Well, they can't see it from there, unfortunately, Evan, but and I don't have my radio gear in this car. We've got our radio gear in our good cars, but I've been gesticulating to them about the front left, and they've hung out a few boards with tyre question mark, and they've got the message. They're pretty experienced. They know what's going on.
But essentially, Alan, it's all up to you to determine when the right time is to come in. It makes it very difficult for you.
It's a double decision. It's up to me and that bloody tyre, even. If it blows out, I think the decision's made for me. But I'm narrowing the corners out. You can see probably not this one. I don't have to worry about this.
It's a very hard circuit on left-hand tyres, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. But I'm narrowing the corners out so that you'll see here my line's a bit different. So that if it does go bang, I can probably spin the car away onto the right-hand side of the circuit rather before it hits the fence.
We were watching when Jorge Fury was trying to get by you, and he was behind for quite a long time, that he was locking up his left-hand front tyre as well and smoking quite a lot from the front. Is he likely to have the same trouble, do you think?
No, I don't think this is so much a flat spot, Evan. I think it's just plumb worn out. I don't think there's any rubber left on the outside of it. We took some precautions last night, changed the suspension a little, but it's obviously still doing the same thing. This is the problem of still running a car this sort of weight on this little tyre like that. It's just not up to it. It wears out. I'm pretty happy with myself that I'm keeping up with George actually at the moment.
If you do have to go in the pits early, will Colin Bond take over, or will you keep on driving, go out again?
Now, we might have planned at the beginning that if we, about the slowest thing we do at the moment is change drivers. Because Colin looks built about right while he's standing up. When he sits down, he's like a little potty car. About the slowest thing we can do is change drivers. So if I'm in a position where I think I can run a place in this race, I'll just have a drink and stay in the car.
Alan, what's the sun likely to be like later in the race? I noticed as you went up the hill that time, it's getting pretty low. Is that much of a problem here at Amaroo?
Yes, it certainly is. We'll have our screen cleaned when we get in. And I have done as many miles here as anybody, I guess. I've got a special visor made up for the front of a helmet that's a lot lower than the other blokes, and as the sun starts to go there and it gets bad going up the hill, I pull the front of a helmet down and just drops the visor about half an inch, and should be in good shape.
Alan, how much testing do you do here at Amaroo?
The moment I'm testing this front tyre, Evan. It's not going all that well.
Well, I think
we've just done some testing on these tyres and rims to get this one a bit close. Oh no, he's looking through. Done some testing at Oran Park. But the thing we couldn't do there, of course, is wear test for Amaroo. But Amaroo's a very busy circuit. It's sometimes pretty hard to get onto for testing.
Alan, I don't know how you can talk and sound so calm, because the times I've driven around Amaroo quickly, nothing like as fast as you're going, I found that the strains on the corners, like this one, are so extreme that I'd had difficulty making a sound. How are you managing it?
Oh, well, I probably have a lot of trouble sitting up there in the box where you are, but you do that for a living and I do this, I guess.
Well,
how's the football going anyway? The rugby's on today. They started yet?
yes, not too bad, Alan. I think we might leave you with your tyre problem for a while and come back to you later in the race. Thank you very much for your contribution to it.
Aren't you even going to give me a score on the football?
Well, we'll give you a progressive score as the afternoon goes on.
I'll give you a quick progressive score. Turbo 1, Grice 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Allan Grice, a magnificent driver, and there's a man that we've been following, Barry Jones, who went into the pits early, has come back out onto the circuit, and keeping in mind he's so many laps down.
15 in fact.
15 in fact, but he's been able to fight his way back past Jorge Fury. Let's have a look now, a recap on the top 5 in the Silastic 300 with 57 laps completed. Jorge Fury in number 55, the Turbo Bluebird, heads the pack, clear of Allan Grice in the Commodore. In 3rd place, Peter Brock in the Commodore. 4th place is Terry Finnigan in the Commodore. And then in 5th place is Peter McLeod, an outstanding performance in the slick RX7. And there's Barry Jones. who looked so comfortable early in this race to be there pressuring the Allan Grice for the lead, but an early pit stop put him out of commission.
But what a great drive. You know, he's 15 laps behind and he's passing the fastest men on the circuit. That shows you the spirit of people like Barry Jones. Oh, and there looked a great puff of smoke from Peter McLeod's car. Whether it was just a tire, I think it's all it was, but he now has Barry Jones behind and Jones is going through. And that's the man who's in 5th spot, being passed by the man who's 15 laps behind and out to prove a point.
We follow the cars down to Honda Corner. There's Barry Jones going through in the Darrell Lee car. Winner of the race last year. Did exceptionally well, teamed with Allan Jones, of course. Co-drove with Barry to win the event last year. Today back on his property, though, Allan in Victoria after a less than successful return to the World Championship trial earlier this year. You'll recall in March he drove for Jackie Oliver's Arras team in the Long Beach Grand Prix. And Jones lasted 59 of the 75 laps before retiring. You'll remember that the two Jones boys did so well in the CRC race as it was then last year. But alas, there's going to be no repeat. The winner's circle will not be revisited by Barry Jones this year. Traffic still fairly hectic as Barry Jones still tries to make up some ground, but being 15 laps down, that's going to be difficult. Just back behind him is Peter McLeod, and back one car behind them, of course, is Jorge Fury, the race leader. Our Morris scoring system tells us that at this stage, Jorge Fury still 6 seconds in front of Allan Grice in car 6, then 21 seconds back to Peter Brock. There's the traffic that we mentioned through Wonderlic Corner. I don't think Jorge Fury before today would have rated this his favourite circuit as a result of the problems encountered here last year when duelling for second with Allan Grice. Their cars came into contact and exited the turbo Nissan. He's been threatening for such a long time this year in the Touring Car Championship as we work lap 60 of 155 in the Silastic. The top 6 last year, of course, in the 300, Allan Jones and Barry Jones were the winners over Fred Gibson in the Nissan Turbo. Allan Grice finished in 3rd place. Larry Perkins and Gary Scott in the dealer team Commodore. Phil Alexander and Ron Gillard and Jim Richards finished back in 6th place. So at the moment, though, we no hope of a RX7 victory, but there could well be a Turbo Nissan victory. There's Peter McLeod going through, and there's our race leader, Jorge Fury, back across the strike, and he leads rather comfortably the Silastic 300 from Amaroo Park. We'll take a break, and then we'll be back. Welcome back to the Silastic 300 from Amaroo Park. Here's Allan Grice in car number 6, running in 2nd spot at the moment behind Jorge Fury, but we've just noticed in the last lap or so some smoke starting to stream out from underneath the rear of the Commodore. As you can see there, that wisp of smoke as they go up over the top and drop down into Dunlop Loop. So I would dare say Allan Grice will be making his pit stop quickly. Let's go to the pits down Evan Green.
You came in early, Peter. Why?
Well, I had a bit of a think about it. I was so far off what I thought the lap time should be that I thought, well, I was wanting to give the pit crew a bit of training, and also obviously very certain that Larry should do some driving. So what we decided to do is to change it into a 1/3 each. They just put tyres on it. Tyres were worn after about 15 laps, so I just cruised around. But obviously we didn't have enough time to set the suspension up. Getting a new wheel. Still no excuses. It's you know, it's motor racing.
What signals are you going to give Barry out there on the track?
I just give him an indication of how I found the tyres and how I did it, and also what the car was like when I handed over. The car's fine. It's just a matter of driving around legally and correctly.
It looks hot work.
Oh yeah, it's hot out there today.
We'll let you get onto those pit signals. I know you're anxious to get the message across to Larry. Peter Brock, and it's back to you, Garry Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mike. Well, there you are, Mike. Evan, Peter Brock admitting that he's out of contention. You don't hear that too often, but as he said, the car just not quite set up the way it should have been, or he would like it to have been. And so Larry Perkins out there now circulating. Top 5 in the race to this stage. The Silastic 300 for 1983. George Fury, the Nissan Turbo, still leading. Car 55 from car 6. Allan Grice blowing smoke, could be in trouble in the Commodore. Terry Finnigan also in a Commodore in car 15. Now in third place, McLeod from the rear of the grid in the Slick 50 RX7 in fourth spot. And then Jimmy Richards in the BMW car 31.
Well, Grice has been battling a tyre that's going off. You can see him signalling to the pit crew. He said he's been doing that for several laps to warn them that he's going to stay out there as long as he possibly can. But I think he has another problem at the rear of the car, starting to blow a little smoke out. So I think you might see Brock, or certainly Grice rather, into the pits within the next 2 laps. We'll follow his progress as he comes down the back part of Amaroo Park's twisty racetrack. Recapping as Garry did before, probably the move of the race so far, well, the drive of the race has been Peter McLeod in car number 50, the Slick RX7, that on the current run is up to 4th spot in the field.
And only the 4 cars on the leading lap now, down to and including McLeod.
Grice's pit stop will be an interesting one to watch, because as indicated to us when talking with Evan Green, now he's going to give it one more lap. Yep.
Not tired.
Across the line. Up to the top of Bitchupave as we pick up on the race leader, George Fury, who has just arrived at the pit area. We see now the Nissan Turbo team changing rubber. Evan Green is trackside.
See that those tyres are really worn. Look at the front tyre just front off. You can see how the outside end has gone. Great masses of melted rubber. Look at it. I can scour it out with my fingers. That's the way the tyres are here. George is staying in the car. He's on his own. One of the few drivers going all the way. He looks hot. Look at the way he's looking at Howard Marsden, like a runner about to jump out of the blocks. He really is tense there. He knows he's in the front. He knows this stop could cost in the race. The refueling is done. The tyres are on, and George Fury's on his way.
And right behind him goes John Harvey, who has also completed his pit stop. Fresh driver aboard. And Grice now heading back into the pit area for his first pit stop, carrying race cam, as we've been keeping up with the problems of his car. Here comes Grice into his pit. Keeping in mind his co-driver is Colin Bond.
I don't think we'll see a change of driver. Bondi was doubtful that he was going to get in the car today. Evan Green is on site with Allan Grice.
Allan. Allan having a drink, as you can see. He's thirsty. I won't speak to him because he only asked me the football score, I'm sure, but you can see him sucking away there while the tyres come off. Having trouble getting that front tyre off. The front right-hand tyre, which has been the problem, doesn't want to come off. They're having trouble with the jack. Now they're right. The hands are up. Allan Grice almost ready. They've got the jack out from the back. Signals are up. All men clear. The fourth one clear. Away goes Allan Grice. He's out. His tyre still on the track here. This is what it was like, the tyre that caused him the trouble. Look at the gobs of rubber again. That's the story of the race. The heat, the pace is so great. The tyres are melting so that we have just little pieces of rubber like that being worn off the tyres. Okay, what's happening out on the track?
Well, we're certainly following Allan Grice, that very fast pit stop that put him back on the road again. We'll take the gap back after one lap to George Fury from Allan Grice. They've both pitted at basically the same time in the race, so it won't be too hard to see whether or not Grice can make up any ground. Should be fairly close, heading down to Honda Corner, as you can see there. A couple of cars coming up. One, I think, is John Harvey, and ahead of him, whoops, over into the rough. Bit of surf and turf for Allan Grice. He went right off the track, came back in again. That was an unprepared move. Tyres obviously haven't warmed up. That's not going to do them any good whatsoever. We might ask Allan to give us an explanation of that a bit later.
So those two pit stops, George Fury and Allan Grice, has put a new complexion on the race at this stage, and Terry Finnigan on the track is the race leader, in fact, in car 15, the Triple M Commodore, followed by car 50, Peter McLeod in an RX7. Then George Fury is in third spot, followed by Allan Grice. George Fury, of course, in the Nissan Turbo, and the Nissan team manager, Howard Marsden, is with Evan Green at the present time down in the pit area.
Howard, George has made his pit stop. Is the race going according to plan?
Yes, it is. Of course, part of the plan was not to lose Freddie so early. That, unfortunately, was a turbo problem that we had with him. George is driving exactly the way that we asked and doing a brilliant job at the moment.
Will he come in again?
Hopefully not.
Can he win the race from here?
Yes, most certainly. We are scheduled that we don't have to stop again. We think the Commodores may again run out of brakes, and the tyres are not looking well for them. At the moment, Terry Finnigan's in the lead because he has not yet made his pit stop. So we are at the moment looking very good.
You must be encouraged for Bathurst.
Indeed we are, because we have more reliability yet to come. And if we can do something like this at a very difficult little circuit like Amaroo, you're right, we're very encouraged.
Back to you, Garry.
Okay, and during that interview there with Howard Marsden, George Fury has caught up one more spot and is now back into second place on the track behind Terry Finnigan. Peter McLeod, third spot in the RX7 car 50, and Allan Grice, car 6, the STP Commodore, in fourth place. And as you heard Howard say, tyres and brakes, the problems perhaps for the Commodores. Well, that's the way they're finding it, Grice included. There's the race leader, Terry Finnigan, and oh gee, he's just been out there and circulated coolly and calmly all afternoon so far, and that's put him in front on the track.
Whether or not Finnegan can keep that pace up for much longer, we'll have to wait and see. Fury is back on with fresh rubber and will be making a big sway that Terry Finnegan shortly. Let's do a recap now and have a look how the top 5 are on the racetrack in the Silastic 300. Terry Finnegan on screen is your race leader in the Commodore, number 15. Second spot, George Fury in the Turbo Bluebird. In third spot, Peter McLeod, a great performance that in the RX7. Fourth spot, Allan Grice in the Commodore, and fifth spot is Peter Brock. The car now being driven by Larry Perkins, and it's the 05 Commodore. Across the strike, and number 15, Terry Finnegan, on the inside there of Jim Richards, heading up Bishopove again.
Well, the BMW, I've got to say, has been just a shade disappointing at this stage. In the early 25 laps or so of the race, they were hanging on there in about 7th spot. Behind the second dealer team car with Johnny Harvey at the wheel, but since then they seem to have slipped out of contention, and for a car that was much vaunted, had much potential, it hasn't shown out to best effect here today. Well, Terry Finnegan, car 15, Commodore, race leader in the Silastic 300. We'll be back in a moment.
Last year's race winner is sitting on the fence this time, Barry Jones. There's a saying in motor racing that the small things that put you out of the race. What went wrong?
Well, our discriminator's stuck and we're pressurising the fuel tank.
Your discriminator? What's that?
Well, the tank is supposed to breathe through the discriminator. When we first come in, we had some rubbish in the tank, and it appears that some of the same rubbish is in the got in the discriminator. The trouble is we don't use this gear all year until the long distance races start. And there's a problem somewhere. We did 112 laps on Thursday without a problem, and now we've just done, well, the car was running extremely well, and then, you know, no fuel, so no fuel, no go.
I get the feeling you'd feel happier if something major had gone wrong with the car. How's it feel to be sitting here with such a small thing sidelining you?
Well, it's a bit annoying. We've put a hell of a lot of work into the rest of the car with the new engine, and we appear to be about the fastest car on the circuit when we're going, but we're not going very well so, at the moment, so it's not much good to us.
Will you go back out on the track if you can get it going again?
Oh, we'll go out for sure. We've got to try and get some value for our sponsors, and also we'll try and sort this problem now for the other races later on.
Barry Jones, last year's winner, the man who set the pace and the man who's now sitting on the fence. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. We pick up the cars coming over the top of Bishopove and dropping into Dunlop Loop. There's our race leader, Terry Finnegan. Terry's been treating the corners rather gingerly, giving lie to the fact that maybe he's almost out of tyres, or maybe brakes, or both. He's been sitting there and working his way forward in the pack as all the other drivers have made their pit stops. He's come up through the pack to now lead the Silastic 300. But keep in mind he already has to complete his pit stop.
I don't think you'll want to leave it too much longer.
I don't think so. Grice stayed out there as long as he could with rubber. Every driver that we've seen, including the lightweight car, the Nissan Turbo, they've all had major tyre problems here today. Finnegan has outlasted most of them. He's been perhaps not setting the same pace or using the car as harshly as Grice, although Grice had that marvellous ability to know what was wrong with the rubber, be able to ease off marginally and nurse the car in for a few more laps before pitting. But Terry Finnegan, who has been one of the more consistent drivers in the Commodore here at Amaroo Park this season in the Better Brakes Amscar series. And it'd be a great thing for Terry if he could pull off a win. At the moment, he's 6.3 seconds in the lead over George Fury, but keep in mind he still has to contest his first pit stop.
Grice in third spot at the moment in the STP Commodore, then Peter McLeod's RX7. What a great job he's done to get up to fourth position, starting from rear of grid. In fact, I think in the Endurance Championships last year, the round that was held at Oran Park, he started rear of the grid and finished up running third. He's out to at least emulate that performance and perhaps go one better here today if he can, but the competition's tough.
Well, 6.3 over Jorge Fury wouldn't be so bad if you only had about 10 laps to go, but unfortunately there's a lot further to go. Only 76 have been completed, and he still has a pit stop to complete.
It's not quite the halfway mark, and Finnegan's going to have to go in shortly, and well, even at best you're looking at 25-30 seconds in the pits. I think probably more than that.
Well, approaching lap 77 and the halfway mark. The race has been in progress for just on 1 hour and 15 minutes. And there's our race leader, Terry Finnegan, flipping the front wheel up in a little bit of sideways motion. Coming down into the right-hand corner at the lake, and here's Terry Finnegan.
Of the leading half dozen, only 3 still to pit. Finnegan one, McLeod another, and Jimmy Richards in the BMW, and that one looks like coming in very shortly. It'll be an interesting one to see, because the BMW pit crew claim that they can refuel, change all the tyres and get him out again in 14 seconds. Hand out the window. I think he might be coming in, Jimmy Richards, shortly.
There's Brian Callaghan. And let's go to the pit area and to Evan Green, as we wait now on the BMW and a crucial pit stop for Jimmy Richards.
Practicing, they can change the wheels in just 14 seconds. 9 have gone so far. They're not worrying about the inside tyres. They're hardly worn. That's a change from other cars. They're up to 14 now, a little longer than practice. They're finished, as you can see. This should save them maybe 15, 20 seconds over the more conventional cars. They're finished. Well, I timed them at just on 24 seconds, but that certainly saved them 10 to 20 seconds over some of the other cars. So these new Demon BMW wheels could be a winning advantage for them in the long distance races. Back to you, Garry.
Oh, thanks, Evan. Well, they've lost very little ground, if any, in fact, in that pit stop. 24 seconds is pretty slick indeed. And Jim Richards still out and towering now with new rubber and feeling pretty comfortable. And if any of the leading division run into any problems in the second half of the race, which we're now into, they're going to be in big trouble, because the BMW should have reliability on its side. But then, of course, the Nissan Turbos have got that. They've had 12 months to develop it.
There's the JPS car, but behind them we have Jorge Fury, who's just been able to snooker Terry Finnegan and go through and take back the lead. So Jorge Fury in the 55 car. Here's Terry Finnegan still holding on in second spot and waltzing a little over the racetrack as the Nissan Turbo comes up behind the JPS BMW. Across the line again, heading up towards Bitchapave Hill. Running second in the race now is Terry Finnegan, and the race leader is the man behind the black BMW, and that of course is Jorge Fury.
Remember, Finnegan still to make a pit stop. McLeod in fourth spot, still to make a pit stop. They're the only two in the leading division still to come in. Fury, race leader, did such a great job through the Touring Car Series, Touring Car Championship Series in 1983. His first visit to Amaroo since this race last year, where he and Grice came together down just about where he is now, in fact, on this corner that put him out of the race.
I don't think George would like to be reminded of that.
Right, well, we'll leave George there for the moment, because we have in the pits the BMW team manager and co-driver, Frank Gardner.
Frank, are you happy with the pit stop?
Yes, Evan, it's not exactly Monaco conditions, but it's, yeah, we were very pleased with 22 seconds. It's not a bad time for...
What changes have you been able to make to the BMW for this race?
Well, very little, really. We only got our package together just prior to the race. The lead time to the first race from the time you get the concessions is all a bit close together. So we're just happy to be out there circulating. We're lying in fifth place, and the car's not disgracing itself, and if we get it all home in one piece, we can look and see what's worn and what's not worn. It's really a trial run for the crew, for the pit stops, for everything. It's a build-up to Bathurst.
How will it go at Bathurst?
Well, I think it'll be reasonably competitive. For a first time out, I'm certainly not unhappy with it.
You're going to be driving at Bathurst. Why is that?
Why is that? I just enjoy
Apart from the fact that you're a hell of a good driver.
I just enjoy a drive. It's, you know, I think all 50-odd-year-olds ought to come out occasionally and have a drive at Bathurst. It's a lovely way to spend an afternoon. It's the best place to watch the motor race from. And providing I can stay around Jimmy Richards' times, nobody really worries.
Frank Gardner, with a bit of a joke in his voice, I think. Back to you, Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Evan. As Allan Grice comes back into the pit area again, and this would be an unscheduled stop, obviously, for Allan Grice. We saw his pit stop earlier, and he can't afford to spend too much time in here.
Peter McLeod in the pits as well, so we've got two of the leading cars in the pits at present time. Evan Green is ready. Let's find out what's happening with Grice.
Well, I'm just standing back, Gary, because we've got Peter McLeod going by, and he's just passing us now. Now let me go and see what the problem is. They're looking underneath the car. It's something a bit more fundamental than tyres, obviously, and they've made no move to change the tyres at all. I might just pose the question to Allan. Allan, what's the problem?
We've done a gearbox, Evan. We dropped a bit of smoke earlier, and the boys had a look at the box when they came in, and they said that that's where the oil came from, so it was only a matter of time until we overheated the box, and that's what's happened. I've now lost second and third gears, and I've only got top. A lot of rattles, a lot of smell, and a lot of hot smoke.
I'll get out of Allan's way. I didn't hear a word he said. I hope the sound was coming through in the microphone. It's a noisy place, the pits, as you well know, Gary. But it's a great disappointment for Allan Grice getting out of the car now. I've had him in the pits here for exactly 59 seconds, 1 minute. So it looks like the end of a brave effort by Allan Grice and the STP team. Looks like you might get a drive, Cole.
Looks that way. It'd be nice to get the experience in the car anyway, Evan. We've done a fair few laps of testing, but obviously didn't want this to happen because the car was running very well.
You're looking forward to Bathurst?
Oh, definitely, you know. I don't know what the problem is. It looks like it may be gearbox or something like that, as though there's been leaking oil and something's come just loose, or I don't know.
Yeah, Allan told us what it was, but like you, I didn't hear what he said, so I'm not sure.
No, I don't
know. People across Australia have heard, so they know, and we don't. It just shows you what motor racing is like.
Very true, yes. They seem to have more information these days than the people in the pits.
You've just suffered a great disappointment. Why are you smiling so much?
Well, at least I have a chance of getting a drive of the car because we won the trip to Italy, and in doing so we won't be able to race at Sandown. We're going to run the second car at Sandown, so if we can do a few laps today, that'll be nice, but I don't think things are looking too good, Evan. They're going to push the car away, so I don't think anybody's going to drive it.
Okay, one car out of the action. What's happening on the other side of the fence, Mike?
Well, so far we know who the race leader is. It's Jorge Fury, Terry Finnigan in the second spot, and Larry Perkins now subbing for Peter Brock in the 05 car running in third. There's more Silastic 300 action to come when we return to Amaroo Park. Welcome back to Amaroo Park, the Silastic 300. And of course, we're in keeping check on Terry Finnegan in car number 15. You may recall he still has a pit stop to complete. He's been nursing the number 15 2MMM car and doing a good job of it at the moment, though. He's second on the road, 7.5 seconds in arrear to Jorge Fury, then 24 seconds back to Larry Perkins in the Peter Brock 05 Marlborough Commodore.
Intriguing, you know, people are starting to check their record books to find out what the longest distance is around here without a pit stop. And I think Finnegan must be just about breaking the record.
What I liked about Allan Grice mentioned yesterday that before the wider rims that they were able to use, they could scrub out a set of tyres here in 4 laps. This weekend they'll be able to scrub them out in 15.
Finnegan must come in soon. Must. He must be getting desperately low on fuel, and he's certainly run out of rubber.
Alrighty, we might head down to the pit area to Evan Green, and maybe he can get a word with Geoff Leeds, who must be pondering whether or not Terry Finnegan is going to come in at all.
Geoff, when's Terry coming in?
Within the next 3 laps, Evan. It's a scheduled stop. We're going to go to 90 laps. The car's going beautifully. Hopefully it'll go the same way till the end of the race.
I see you've got new tyres for him there. They look a little bit worn, but in fact they've just been scrubbed in nicely. Is that right?
Yes, we fitted them in this morning in the early warm-up session. We're actually running a staggered compound. It's the main reason we've been able to go the extra distance. We're running a hard compound on the left-hand side and a softer compound on the right-hand side. where I think the Holden dealer team and Allan Grice have elected to go with an 095 compound. We've elected to go with the harder one.
There's an awful lot of tyre magic involved. You've got to pick the right combination, the right formula.
Certainly, you certainly do. Well, it's all imperative. It's imperative to where you stop. You know, fuel is one thing, but tyres is another. You know, you've got to combine the two.
Geoff, what goes through the mind of a driver about to take over from a car that's been doing so well in the race and could win?
The main thing, Evan, I'm thinking about is just to keep going around and bring the car home. With the mortality rate the way it has been, if I can do that, I think we'll be in the first 3 positions.
Geoff Leeds still waiting for the car to come in. Right behind him in the pit, in fact, is Garry Willmington, and in comes the Finnegan Commodore now. So it's a busy time here in the pit row. Garry Willmington, who's been the leading Ford driver, is just behind. Barry Seton going through in his Capri, and Geoff is about to take over from Terry Finnegan. That's a hard bit of parking. How's he like to do that with plenty of time, let alone in a race? He runs over at Jack because it was a very awkward move for him. He's in the pit, though. Geoff Leeds asking, do you want a break? Do you want me to take over? It's the driver's option whether he wants to keep on going or not, and there's no sign at the moment that Terry Finnegan, yes, he's getting out. The front wheel showing a bit of reluctance to be removed, but the mechanic now has it off, and Finnegan being helpful in getting Geoff Leeds into place, just strapping him in. People of almost the same size. Sometimes when you have a tall and a short driver you have real problems, but they're about the same stature. And Finnegan just strapping Geoff Leeds in, and at the same time telling him how the car is, what the brake pedal is like, where the tricky parts on the track are, how the car's handling, give him the information and trying to calm him down, saying, okay, Geoff, we can win this race. Just take it easy for the first couple of laps. There's a litre of oil going into the engine while it still runs. The mechanic there just checking, put the cap back on again. Meanwhile, further back in the cabin, Terry Finnegan just strapping up the car. Terry, a great drive out there. How's the car feel?
Oh, the car's pretty good, but the brake pedal's been on the floor from the 20th lap.
What were you telling then, Geoff?
I asked him, did he want to get on in or not with no brakes?
Can he do it?
Say yours?
Can he do it?
Oh, yeah, he'll nurse it along.
Can you win it from here?
I think so. As long as he can keep it going.
Well, he's just stalled it, and they're now giving it a push start to get him going again. It's hard taking over from a car that's been raced and is a little bit worn, a bit strange, isn't it?
That's right, yes. I wouldn't like to do the job myself. I know Geoff can do it.
Can't hear the sounds of the car being fired back into life yet. Terry Finnegan running after him to try and give him a hand. He's got to get that car going, and if they don't get it going before they get to the end of the pit road, they're in trouble. That's happened. The car's still stalled. They can't get it running again, and a desperate Terry Finnegan helping to push it back so they can try and push start it again. The car stalled on the way up. Now they've got it going, and Geoff Leeds joins the race, and it's back to the action again with you, Gary Wilkinson.
That has cost them dearly, Evan Green. They're now 2 laps down on the leader, Jorge Fury, and that would put them in about 8th place on the track. So with no brakes, he's going to put in a brave effort to make up that ground, Mike.
I only hope that during the break, Terry was able to tell Geoff Leeds, don't take too much notice of the brake pedal, it's on the floor naturally. Whether or not he got that message across, we don't know. But he's done a great job, Terry Finnegan. If that is the fact, they've been without brakes for about 50 or 60 laps, and he's conserved the car rather well to get to the 90 lap mark. It's all up now to Geoff Leeds. Well, I suppose the main talking point of today's opening round of the Manufacturers' Championship is in fact the new specifications.
Well, the intriguing question, some of it is being answered here today, but of course we won't know all the answers, I guess, until we get to Bathurst. But the questions are, who asked for what in the new regulations, who got what they wanted, and who came out best?
Well, we sought to have a more competitive race car. At this stage, it doesn't seem to be competitive. It's close to it, but not quite there. So I guess you could say that we didn't get what we really wanted.
Who then won?
I think Moffat won. I think Moffat had a perfect race car when he started. And if you look at Barry Jones and Terry Shiel on the grid here and the lap times they're doing at Amaroo this weekend, and you think, well, there's more to come, and when Mr. Moffat unleashes his machine, he's doing well.
Mike, we asked for a few things. We asked for bigger wheels, which we got. Probably a little better than we expected, because we asked for mainly bigger wheels, and they let the rules open where we could go to bigger diameter wheels as well, which is a plus for us. We asked for an inlet manifold and some bigger valves in the cylinder heads. We got half of what we asked for in that respect. We got the inlet manifold but no bigger valves. So basically the amount of output the engine has got is governed by the size of the inlet valve. So we gained to get probably 15 horsepower. The brakes, which is under the FISA Group A regulations, we applied for those and got the brakes and some slight safety modifications as far as strengthening up front hubs to handle the bigger wheels and things like that. But other than that, the main thing we missed out on was the valves.
Is there any one winner?
Well, you would have to look at Allan Moffat and think that he's looking pretty good because he was in front for a start and maybe he's going to gallop a bit further.
Well, we sought a more reliable turbocharger. We have been given a more reliable turbocharger. I'd like to say quickly that it is not a larger turbocharger. It's not there for horsepower. We're using the technology of the 1980s. With regard to who won out of the battle, I'd have to put my money on Allan Moffat's Mazda. That's the only Mazda that's really won out of the whole of the grouping, and that's the car to beat, most certainly.
Well, what did we want and what did we get? We wanted the 4-valve head. We got that. We wanted the Group A suspension. We got that. We wanted lighter weight. We didn't get that. So our power-for-weight ratio problem is ours. The big winners out of the whole deal, I would say, is the Mazda. No two ways about that, especially here. And I think the Fords will probably, the Dickie Johnson one will probably be the one that'll surprise everybody.
Well, I'm quite certain that nobody would argue with the fact that Barry Jones was the quickest car around here with a peripherally ported 12A engine with a 2 dead. The quickest I could do in a Commodore is 3.4. Now, he was 1.5 seconds almost quicker than us with his old engine. So suddenly the new regulations say he can have a bigger engine. We can't have to change anything for power. You work it out.
Well, we'll leave that to you at home to decide who actually won on the trade-off of the specifications. Would remind you, never short of a good one-line response. When Dick Johnson heard about the Mazdas getting permission to 13B motors, he said it was like giving Grant Kenny flippers. There's Larry Perkins in the 05 car, the Peter Brock Commodore, at the moment second on the road.
43 seconds behind the race leader, car 55, George Fury, and 55 and 05 are the only 2 cars on the front running lap. We've got then down into third spot, car 31, the BMW. In fact, let's check the top 5 positions. 55, as we said, George Fury, Turbo Bluebird, then 05, Peter Brock, those 2 on the 1 lap in the lead. 31, Jim Richards, a lap down in the BMW, also car 50, Peter McLeod in the RX7, and Finnegan, who came out 2 laps down after that pit stop, is clawing his way back up there, although he's not, of course, behind the wheel at the present time, but holding down 5th spot.
96 laps completed. Evan Green is in the pits, and let's see what's happening down there.
Well, for much of the race, the leading Ford has been Garry Willmington, but you've had a long pit stop while Bill O'Brien has taken over. What's been the problem, Garry?
The oil cooler's busted open on it. Split the oil cooler.
Let me just get you out of the way, or else we'll both get our names in the paper and away we will. The car can continue?
Yeah, we've just taken the oil cooler off now. We've disconnected it. And it will go on. The oil temperature will be a bit hotter, but it'll be all right.
You've been doing marvellous things here, but you've been largely unrecognised. For instance, at the last meeting, you circulated the circuit faster than any V8 has ever gone round. He's taken the lead with him, and there's a great lash as the lead whisks back, but he's away and everything's okay. But you've been doing marvellous things here, faster than Brock, faster than Johnson.
Yeah, we're finally getting the thing sorted out, getting a little bit of money from sort of a couple of sponsors like Soul Ace and Everlast and that are helping us out a bit, you know. It's just helped us to get the car a bit faster.
How does it feel when you know you're going so well and you're not getting recognition?
Very, very frustrating. Yeah, it's the thing come in, we had a few problems with the crew, just not properly sorted out. We've got a few things to sort out, but we'll give them what for when we do.
And you'll be right for the James Hardy 1000 on October the 2nd?
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
Okay, Garry Willmington, over to the other Garry.
Thanks, Evan. And on screen still with 05, Larry Perkins at the wheel in second place in this Silastic 300 behind car 55, and that's George Fury. That's the way they'll be when we return in a moment. Race leader George Fury just in front there on the track of car 25, the second dealer team Commodore. Philip Brock, I think, Pete's brother, at the wheel at the moment, having taken over from Johnny Harvey. Interesting that Philip Brock until today had only done about a half dozen laps on this track at Amaroo, and that was way back in 73.
Well, John Harvey, of course, won this race only a couple of years ago, carrying the same number for the same team. And Phil Brock, who will be partnering Harvey when they come to the James Hardy 1000 Classic. Phil Phil Brock, of course, is the shadow of brother Peter Brock, and has competed in many forms of motor racing. Let's take a look at his career.
Well, you don't see too much of Phil Brock on the racetrack, in fact, but he takes care of most of the business in Melbourne, the administration, but certainly a very capable driver, as his record suggests. He drove with Pete at Bathurst in 76 to finish third, 77 finished fifth. This is his first major touring car outing in several years, as you can see, but a very capable driver indeed. A very laconic man.
There he goes, up Bitchapave Hill, Phil Brock.
102 laps gone, and for the last 22 laps, car 55, Jorge Fury, the Nissan Turbo, has been in the lead. 05, the leading dealer team Commodore in second spot.
Just judging by the last time through Dunlop Loop, Phil was getting that car very, very wide indeed out into no man's land. So we'll follow his progress through the field. Still in the top 6, not doing a bad job. Peter McLeod still in third spot in the 50 car, and here's Brock coming down to the late corner, down through the gears. Just ahead of him is Brian Callaghan in the 47 car. And we might go trackside to the pits to Evan Green.
The only Queensland entry in the field is Geoff Russell and his mate Barry Lawrence, just about to go past us now. That's your car 28. The only Queensland car. How's the Commodore going?
The car's going very well, Evan. We had a bit of a problem early in the piece when I got held up on the outside when I think it was Gary Callaghan and Jim Richards in the JPS car came together. That then put me in a bad position. About 6 cars slipped through, and I had to work a lot harder than I would have liked to early in the race to try and stay in there. But the back tyres got a bit hot, and I just got a little over-exuberant over the back, and we squashed it a bit.
It must be an easy thing to do, though.
It certainly is. It's slippery. You wouldn't believe how slippery it is out there in a big car. I've always driven small cars here, and they sure are a lot easier.
Well, how hard is this race? Because Amaroo is a very testing circuit.
Well, I think it's a lot harder race to do than Bathurst by a long stretch of the imagination. You never get a time to have a break, and by the time you've done about 70 laps, you're fairly tired.
Do you know where you're coming in the race?
Yeah, I knew I was coming 6th at the time we came in, and well, we sent us up to Barry now, and he's doing a great job out there, so we're hoping it'll go till the end.
Geoff Russell, the Queenslander, in car 28.
Thank you, Evan. There's Peter McLeod going through in car number 50. Started from the rear of the grid, has already made his way up into third place. And 1 lap down on the race leader, of course, Jorge Fury. So they've done exceptionally well from last spot, and gives them a great heart going into other rounds of the Endurance Championship, and also looking ahead to the major race on the national calendar, and that is the James Hardie 1000. And don't forget, viewers across Australia will be able to see all of the action live from the 1983 James Hardie 1000, exclusive to the 7 network.
15 cars remaining in the race at this point. 23 having started. McLeod, the last man away, as you heard Mike say, from the grid. Oh, bit of smoke there. Has done a great job to get up to his present position. Only 1 car on the lead lap at the moment, obviously the leader. No, 05 is there as well. 2 cars on the front running lap.
Well, a father and son combination that certainly has been watched very closely today at Amaroo Park is Barry Seton and son Glenn Seton. And you've just seen Peter McLeod going through. There's the 33 Alpha Courier's Seton car going through Honda Corner. Heading down to the Lake Turn. I think it's the first time we've seen a father and son touring car combo since Sir John and Geoff Brabham set up in the Ford Falcon at Bathurst a few years ago.
Well, if some of the Seton experience can rub off on the younger, but then he's got a pretty good career ahead of him, I would say, because Barry Seton's been a distinguished man in touring cars for a long, long time, former Bathurst winner. And Glenn will be doing pretty well if he does half as well. Heading
through down onto the back part of the course, the Alpha Couriers car goes through as we go back to the pit area and Evan Green.
Well, many a race has been lost from the front, and I'm sure that Howard Marsden is well aware of that saying. So what sort of signals, what sort of instructions are you passing on to George Fury?
Well, the poor driver is out there most of the time and he does not know what's going on. He's been given a plan, he's doing the best he can, but he really has no knowledge. He doesn't have the television like your viewers do. So we have
Fury,
simple, clear signals.
Well, now, let's just have a look at the signals, because just down here, one of your men is actually working up a board. Howard, just what is it they're doing?
The camera. So we've got Fury. His time is 56.2 seconds, and he's on lap 109. So that's a very simple one. Now, up until now, we've been giving him a gap to Brock. Now he's lapped Brock. We've given him the slow down signal, and now Fury for the rest of the race, if we have no more problems, will look in the mirror and actually gear himself off Brock, or in fact Perkins, who's driving the car at the moment. But if we need to catch somebody, we show Fury, minus, and then the Brock situation, or whoever it is, and he can watch those seconds either tick up or tick down. And he makes the final decision whether he can push the car harder or not.
So the control of the race now is here in your hands, virtually.
It is indeed, and sometimes I wish it weren't.
Howard Marsden, back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Evan, and Howard Marsden for explaining that to our viewers. On camera at the moment, George Fury, 38 years of age, only lasted 40 laps at Bathurst last year, and they went out with gasket problems. There's the farmer, still in front, going through there. Looks like one car's gone into the Monia bank there.
Whoop, car number 90, it's gone in a very big way and done a lot of damage.
It's Abrahams and Burrell.
It was an escort.
I think it'll need to be escorted off the circuit shortly. It's really done some front-end damage.
George Fury's teammate, I think Fred Gibson, won the first ever race that was held on this circuit, if I'm not mistaken, mate.
Well, it goes back a number of years with Fred Gibson, the first ARDC conducted meeting here at Amaroo, which is located, for interstate viewers, 40 kilometres northwest of Sydney, was held 13 years ago when Fred Gibson and the then GTHO Falcon turned in the fastest one lap of 66 seconds. Now today, in the current model Falcon, they're getting around here in 53 to 54 seconds. So 13 years and a saving of 13 seconds. Let's recap now the top 5 in the Silastic 300 as we go 110 of 155 laps.
Fury first at this stage, car 55, the Turbo Bluebird. Howard Marsden has got things in control. A lap down, 05, Peter Brock, the Commodore, then car 50, Peter McLeod in the RX7, Jim Richards, car 31, the BMW, and Terry Finnigan, the Commodore, in car number 15, although of course Finnegan at the present time not at the wheel. Jeff Leeds having taken over that car and with no brakes is doing a remarkable job. Just behind the scenes here, Mike, Bobby Morris helping us with our lap scoring situation here today, tapped me on the shoulder to remind me that he finished second to Fred Gibson in that first race here all those years ago.
Yes, he's only a young fella, Bobby. I didn't think he was that old up to that. There's the Finnegan car having a lap put on it by the little Tiger in the Turbo Nissan, George Fury. And it'd be a rewarding experience for the Nissan team to come up trumps here today. Let's go back to Evan Green, who has John Harvey.
Yes, you were talking about Fred Gibson, all the experience he's amassed. Well, here's a man who can match him, John Harvey. John, what's it like out there in terms of physical demand? I'm asking a question of someone who knows what it's all about, because you've been racing for, what, 20, 25 years?
That's right. Well, obviously you need a lot of stamina because of the weight loss in perspiration. I mean, I'm wringing wet. I think you're probably in that first 60 or 70 laps tonight, you'd probably lose something like 4 pounds of weight. Once you get out of the car, you have to have the ability to recover very quickly, so there's always the chance you may have to get back in within a few laps. That hasn't happened to me today. I'll probably get back in about lap 120 or thereabouts, and I feel quite okay now after having a rest and a drink.
How fit does a racing driver have to be? Any special exercise that's needed?
Well, I'm one of those lucky people with my metabolism is such I've really never done any special training for motor racing, and I've never really had any problems.
Well, what makes a good racing driver?
One that keeps winning. I haven't been doing too much of that lately, I'll tell you.
You're looking forward to Bathurst?
I certainly am. I mean, we're getting... well, I mean, we haven't been really super competitive here this weekend, although the car's not looking too bad at the moment. But I think come Sandown and Bathurst, Holdens are going to be looking real good.
What more do you have to do to them to get them ready for Sandown and Bathurst?
Oh, after today, well, as you know, Cam's announced, or formally announced, the amended rules tomorrow, and we know what those rule changes are, and we'll have our cars ready for Sandown. In fact, a week before Sandown, ready to test.
What extra changes are you allowed?
Well, we'll have a larger rear deck spoiler and larger disc brakes.
Right, we have one of the cars being pushed up the pitch, by the way. It's been in trouble before. It's the Brian Callaghan car, the 2 Speedway men, Mike. I don't think it looks too happy for them. They've been in a few times. I'll check with them a little later to see what their problem is. In the meantime, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Evan. Well, we saw there the problem with Phil Brock going off the circuit there, while John Harvey was extolling the virtues of the Commodore. Talking to John before the race today, I actually asked him what car he would like to be lining up in if it wasn't the dealer team one, and his choice was a Mazda RX7, but only really for the experience. He suspects they'd be a lot more enjoyable to handle in comparison to the Holdens and Fords. The Silastic 300 continues after this break from Amaroo Park. Welcome back to Amaroo Park and the Silastic 300. Well, the days of the Chevrolet Camaro aren't over. There's number 3, Mike Bergman, still continuing and still within the top 10, Garry.
In 9th place, in fact, at the present time, and first-year driver, Mike Burgmann. He's taken on a handful in the Camaro. Just have a look at a few details. He's a latecomer to car racing, I think, at 36, and he's taken on, as I said, a handful with the Camaro, but he's doing pretty well here in 9th place.
Well, he's qualified for the Camaro Drivers Club when he rolled the Camaro at Oran Park in May. You don't qualify unless you get one of them upside down.
I like that. He hopes to complete Bathurst.
In 1983 with Tony Longhurst.
Well, Longhurst, I think, is at the wheel at the moment. And, of course, he's been the leading amateur driver, along with Joe Beninka, in the Alfa Romeo series. And he also is a first-year driver.
And also a very fast man on water skis, they tell me, Tony Longhurst.
He used to be a record holder, Australian water ski record holder, and former winner of the Bridge to Bridge Water Ski Classic. So he's an all-round sportsman, and it'll be interesting to see how the pair of them go.
Well, this will be Charles played him this afternoon because his record shows that he was able to travel on water at about 210 kilometres. So it'll be a piece of cake. But there's Tony Longhurst and Mike Bergman still continuing on, finishing in, they certainly appear in the Dream World entry to be looking at a top 10 finish, 9th at the moment on the road. And in the Camaro, and Kevin Bartlett, who, of course, pioneered, I would think, the Chevrolet Camaro. He'll partner Dick Johnson, incidentally, at Bathurst, is at Amaroo today, and would you believe, using Japanese equipment. No, he's not on the racetrack. He's using a camera. So, Big Rev Kev. We go to the pits now, and we have the dealer team in for a pit stop.
And it's a bit of a practice, Mike. They're wanting to see how quickly they can go. They reckon they can cut 5 seconds off their best time. So they've been practicing here. Everything is laid out properly. Off come the wheels. New nuts are in place. See how they're glued to the outside of the wheel. You might just be able to pick it up over the mechanic's shoulder, so they're in place. No time lost. Peter Brock in the car. 17 seconds gone. He's all strapped up. This is a quick stop indeed for a car with, what is it, 5 wheel studs to have to tighten. All done, 4 wheels, fuel's right. Car is down from the jack, and they're away 28 seconds. Now that's without the knock-on hubs of the BMW, and only 6 seconds slower. That was a quick stop. Good practice by the Holden dealer team.
Well, obviously their visit to Amaroo today for the Silastic 300 was certainly at the back of their minds to try and win the race or finish well up and finish up in the prize money. But as Peter Brock said on arrival in Sydney, they were here to practice. They have a lot of things set up properly. Whoosh, says Peter McLeod.
Second place for McLeod.
So McLeod, starting at the rear of the grid, and the RX7 is now up to second.
Well, he was. Is he going to remain there? No, Brock's back again to second place. There'll be a scrap, I think, between these two from here on out. Of course, they're a lap down on race leader Jorge Fury in car 55, the Nissan Bluebird, but I think this is going to be worth following for the next few laps. 05, Brock back behind the wheel.
Well, 120 laps completed of 155 in the Silastic 300 here today at Amaroo Park, the first round of the Endurance Championship. I suppose one fellow who's missing from the field, a lot of people will be asking questions interstate watching our telecast, is Alan Moffat. Well, the official reason given for Alan Moffat's no-show today is the event was only granted championship status 6 weeks ago. And by that stage, Moffat had already committed himself to a round at Oran Park a little later.
That's what a few other people had as well.
120 of 155. George Fury in the Nissan Turbo with 1 lap up on the Peter Brock car, and then of course Peter McLeod in 3rd place. We might recap the top 5 for you now in the Silastic 300. Fury in front, Brock in 2nd place in the Commodore, Peter McLeod, the driver of the race, in car 50 up to 3rd. Jimmy Richards battling his way back through the pack is in 4th place in the BMW, and 5th is Terry Finnigan. They got it started, got it back on the track, and 2 Commodores in the top 5. It's Peter Brock heading up to the top of Bitchupave Hill.
Brock, champion at Bathurst in 72, 75, 78, 9, 80, and in 82. 3-time touring car champion, 8-time winner of the endurance race at Sandown.
Well, throughout the years at Bathurst, of course, he and Alan Moffat have been fierce rivals. It would appear the only time they are really close these days is actually on the track. During the touring car series, when Moffat was pushing for the 13B engine, Brock blew up at the very thought of such an advantage. Moffat responded by suggesting Brock get off his rear end and do some development and testing instead of just whinging. Then came the surface round, which saw Brock claiming Moffat was sandbagging so as not to win by too much, and then therefore risk Cam's non-approval of the 13B motor. And the final irony came perhaps on Sunday, May 29th. Cam's announced the approval of the 13B at the very time Alan Moffat was running around Oran Park using a 12A motor to knock 1.4 seconds off the lap record. So Peter Brock was still some modifications to make on the Commodore with a new spoiler. Hopes to be a little more competitive by the time the next round of the championship comes up. And he's eyeing one event and one event only. That's the big one on October the 2nd.
Well, he's just put another lap on Geoff Leeds in the Terry Finnegan Triple M Commodore, because Brock and McLeod, 2nd and 3rd on the track, are both 2 laps down now on the race leader, the Nissan Turbo driven by George Fury.
Over the top of Bitchupave and down into Dunlop Loop. There's the 05 car going through. Peter Brock at the wheel, coming up on one of the, appears to be the Nissan cars as they head down into the Honda corner. Through that turn. And there's Peter Brock sprinting down towards the lake corner, and 55
George Fury. So he unlaps himself once, Brock, and I guess Fury's not worried. He knows he's got a lap and 3 parts up his sleeve.
That means George can still conserve the car and push along at his own pace then, with about 24 laps still to go in the Silastic 300. Let's go to the pits now to Evan Green.
Kevin Bartlett here in the pits, taking photographs rather than taking corners. When are we going to see you in action again, Kevin?
All the boys about around the pits reckon I'm spying on them from a long distance. I've got some very long lenses.
Well, what have you learned today?
Well, I've learned that certainly all the tyre situation hasn't changed a great deal as far as competitiveness is concerned. About what we reckon on rim sizes happened. 2 or 3 tenths, half a second maybe on qualifying, and the cars do about twice or 2/3 more the distance on the rubber that they used to. Long hard road yet for a lot of teams. BMW team looks very impressive. Nissan obviously very, very impressive, but they've had a 50% failure rate today. BMW have had a 100% rate of reliability. I shouldn't say that at this stage. I was just thinking that easily puts the mocker on somebody.
You're going to run with Dick Johnson at Bathurst in the Falcon. How good will the Ford be?
We believe it'll be very, very good indeed. The reason we're not here today, as a matter of fact, is because we couldn't get quite the right tyre that we needed to do this race at this racetrack. We'll be partnered for Oran Park, that's for sure. I've come back from a trip that I've done into Hong Kong and Japan.
I know, I ran into you there.
Yeah, well, speaking literally, I'm on my way back there in a couple of weeks, straight after Oran Park, as a matter of fact. Therefore, I'm going to miss the Sandown race, and I'll be back in time for 2 weeks' practice for Bathurst.
Does that mean that after Bathurst we might see you in a Japanese car? Is that possible?
Well, it's very possible. Depends on what CAMs do about this Group A homologation, whether they're going to run straight Group A in 1985, or whether they're going to run this combination of Group A and Group B that they're running now for 2 or 3 years hence. That does affect what type of car or what particular car of the Japanese cars that I would get. I'm talking at the moment with 3 manufacturers, all Japanese. They're the only ones that geographically we can handle.
So Kevin Bartlett, the driver, will see in action with Dick Johnson in the Ford for the rest of this year and maybe in a Japanese car next year. What an intriguing prospect, Garry.
Yeah, certainly is. Japanese manufacturers doing it well, and there's one of them, Nissan, the Turbo Bluebird, with Jorge Fury at the wheel in the lead. 28 laps remaining out of the 155 laps here in the Silastic 300 at Amaroo Park, and he's well clear. He's got a lap up on Peter Brock in 0.5 in second place, then a further lap to car 50, Peter McLeod, the RX7 in third spot, and McLeod is 33 seconds ahead of car 31. That's the BMW with Jim Richards at the wheel in fourth place. Fury in command, doing it well. We saw Brock take one lap back off him earlier, but he's not worried at all. And why should he be with 28 laps to go, sitting pretty in the Silastic 300?
Four things make a winner. Firstly, equipment. It must be the best. It must feel right. Secondly, good style is essential. Thirdly, you need a reserve of power. And finally, the precise control to direct that power accurately. Put it all together and you're a winner. Mazda RX7, the mark of success.
It's great to drive a winner.
Welcome back to Amaroo Park, and whoop, we've had one RX7 hit the wall coming out of Wonderlick Corner. It's the Bob Stevens, Ron Dixon barbecues galore entry.
Bob Stevens was at the wheel. He was out of the car very quickly and over the fence, as you can see. It's done an awful lot of damage. He's damaged a leg as well, Bob Stevens. There he is on camera at the moment, boot off and treading on that foot very gingerly. We'll go to Evan Green when we have an opportunity to find out just what took place there. It was officials there in attendance checking with him what is the problem. Is he all right? Can he stand on his feet? Yes, he's okay. Evan Green, a comforting pat on the back for Bob Stevens. They head up towards our camera position, hands through the hair. Dixon pointing to the car, saying, my heavens, what are we going to do about it? Well, I'll tell you what, it's just going to sit there, I think, for the rest of the race, the way things are going.
Well, bad luck indeed for the Dixon-Stevens combination. First time out on the track. The car has been a rush job to have it assembled here in Australia. At the moment, you can see the track maintenance crew moving the vehicle out onto the circuit. And this is a precarious little piece, hoping that no one blows a tyre coming out of the corner as they start to lift it up. Because anyone who pops a tyre will turn right.
Yes, fortunately, this is not in the first hectic laps of the race. The traffic has thinned out a little bit as they try to hook the car up and get it on the back of the truck. Let's go down to Evan Green.
Well, Bob Stevens, I'm glad to see you with that can of Coke. Are you all right?
Yes, fine, Evan.
What's wrong with the foot?
When I hit the fence, I just flew up in the air. foot hit on the clutch pedal, that's all. I'm sure it's all right, it's just a bit bruised.
What happened to the car?
There was a bit of a vibration coming into the corner, and then the car just let go and the tail dropped. I'd say either an axle or a wheels let go.
Now, there's a doctor here waiting to see you. Let me get you over to him. You look all right, but let's have you checked, and thank you very much for sparing us the time.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, Bob Stevens.
Well, he's in better shape than the car, I'd say. The doctor can check him over and give him a clean bit of health in no time, but the car's going to take a little longer.
Well, there you can see the track crew still trying to pull the number 21 car up onto the quick tilt truck. Goodness me. Well, the Silastic 300 continues, still with Jorge Fury out in front in car number 55.
I'm waiting for your try.
On the track at the moment, car number 47. It's been in and out of the pits a couple of times. Brian Callaghan. The car today is the first birthday of this car. It actually debuted this time last year in this particular race. It started in only 10 races because Brian says he simply doesn't have the cubic dollars necessary to run more often. And from those 10 events, he says he's banked $3,000 in prize money. At the same time, he's outlaid $25,000 to keep the car competitive. Around $10,000 in sponsorship has helped to ease that burden. His best placing to date was in this event last year when he finished 8th. You may recall he was placed 10th in last year's James Hardy 1000, but was then disqualified through a minor technical infraction. The tyre bill alone for this afternoon, he claims, will leave him little change out of $2,000. The plans a 50-50 race today with Speedway champ Barry Graeme, who's in the car at the present time.
Well, let's just have a look at some stats here as we watch the car on Barry Graeme. Of course, with whom you've had a long association, Mike, in Speedway.
Yes, one of the top drivers in the Speedway, 34 years of age, first year in touring car racing, great record on the Speedway ovals in both speed cars and sedans, and the Australian team captain. And looking very forward to going to the James Hardy 1000 this year with Brian Callaghan.
So there is 47, and as it circulates, let's tell you one that is no longer doing that is the second dealer team car, 25, Phil Brock. It's been pushed in behind the pits. We saw Phil Brock spin out earlier around at Mazda corner. It did some damage. The car has expired and they are out of the race. 05, Peter Brock is making up ground on the race leader, Jorge Fury, and we'll tell you more about that very shortly. But Evan Green has some further information for us from the pits.
Yes, Garry, it's to do with the second dealer team car. They've broken second gear. I spoke to John Harvey. Second gear gone. The car's back behind the pits. It probably won't rejoin the race. You might have seen the quick work here opposite the pit counter to get rid of the Barbecues Galore RX7. There was a lot of fuel spilt there when Bob Stevens hit the wall, and they worked very smartly. What the officials were frightened of was fire. There was petrol leaking across the track, as you must have seen, and the ARDC officials have worked very, very effectively to reduce that hazard. They're hosing the track down now. The hazard seems to have passed, but maybe for a minute or two there was the prospect of a real fire here, and they worked quickly to minimise that risk. Back to you.
Interesting to note, you know, as we pick up on 05, and we saw the guys there working to clear the debris and the fuel from the track, how many people there are behind the scenes, not only to make motor racing safe, but professional and, well, honest. Timekeepers, scrutineers, flag marshals, lap scorers, rescue personnel, stewards, 248 people are involved behind the scenes in the conduct of this race meeting. 05. Peter Brock, and he's now a lap behind car 55, 34 seconds, in fact half a lap behind Jorge Fury. Let's check the top 5 positions, in fact, as we see Brocky go around. 55, Fury, 34 seconds in advance of 05, Brock in the Commodore. Then McLeod, car 50, the RX7 is 2 laps down in 3rd spot, also 2 laps down in 4th spot, car 31, Jim Richards, the BMW, and 3 laps down on the race leader in 5th position, car 15, the Triple M Commodore.
Well, 34 seconds behind the race leader is Peter Brock. Howard Marsden has already explained that his driver, Jorge Fury, has been given the signal to cool it a little. And if Brock starts making inroads on that 34 seconds, they'll tell George to hurry the pace along just a little bit. But it's been an interesting outing from the part of the dealer team with the 05 car, Peter Brock. who of course needs no introduction because of his Bathurst record. His enduro record speaks for itself.
Down into crossing the start-finish line. Hand signal there from Brock as he crossed the line. Trying to make up ground on Fury, and the gap in fact is a lap and 34 seconds, so a lap and a half basically. Comfortable for Fury, and Howard Marsden calling the shots, as you heard him say from the pits when he was speaking to Evan Green before. Can smile. Okay, they had trouble with the turbo in one of the cars today, in car 56 with Fred Gibson, but they've got the race leader by a big margin and looking good with 17 laps to go in the 1983 Silastic 300 when we return to Amaroo Park.
Hi, I'm Colin Bond. You know, when it comes to winning, you've got to look the part. That's why I recommend Auto Mould, like lock guards, to stop those annoying little scratches. The same with Auto Mould protective mouldings, to save your car from those unexpected bumps and scrapes. And of course, no car's completely protected without Auto Mould mud flaps. So look the part, and look for Auto Mould at your local car care centre, and make your car a winner.
Race leader George Fury in the Nissan Bluebird. 139 laps completed, 16 laps to go. A lap and a half in front of 05 Commodore Peter Brock. And Fury, really, what a cool-headed driver he is.
I wonder, does George remember back 12 months ago? It was only 3 laps later in this race, and he was running second at the time. And here he came up on the outside. Allan Grice was trying to pull back that spot, coming through Wonderlick Corner. And a little clash there saw George Fury in the Nissan Turbo getting around sideways, coming out of the corner. And the guardrail along the pit straight was about to get a good working out.
It's about where Bob Stevens hit it just a few moments ago, isn't it?
Doesn't seem to be the right time of the race. Fury goes into the wall, bounces off the fence. The rest of the field were able to miss him and exit George Fury. Well, up to lap, heading in the direction of lap number 140. And George Fury, a year later, is leading the 300 at Amaroo Park.
24 starters today, half the field out of business. 12 cars left, 8 different makes, only one RX7. And that's Peter McLeod. And he started from the rear of the grid with a 12A engine.
He's done a great job. You don't hear too often of people coming off the back of the field and winning in a touring car race. He's had the laps on his side, but only through dedicated racing, and be able to conserve a little in the RX7. And his prior knowledge of this circuit, I think, has helped him quite tremendously here today. Field comes along the back straight at Amaroo Park, heading down to the left-hander. Here is our race leader. It is, of course, George Fury in the 55 Turbo Nissan, and Howard Marsden must be smiling. Let's go to the pits and Evan Green.
Well, another man who's smiling is the man you were just talking about, Peter McLeod. Peter, could you have won the race had you started further up the grid?
I don't think so, Evan. Here in this type of race, starting up the grid or the back of the grid is really not all that important. It's a long-distance race. It's reliability, performance, consistency that counts. And with our brand new motor car, we'll certainly come up with that in its first outing, and we're obviously ecstatic about it, the way it's gone.
Well, it's the only Mazda still running. That must make you fairly pleased.
Oh, that's probably the best of all. Of course, there's a few Mazdas around, and one of them comes from Melbourne, and it's not here. We'd like to think that we're Sydney's representative when we come up against the Melbourne Mazda.
Graham Bailey's out there driving now. He seems to be having a little bit of trouble with handling. Are the tyres going off possibly?
Certainly at this stage, the last 10 or 15 laps I did in the car, between laps, say, 65 and 80, the car was very difficult to handle. And on the slippery track, as it is very slippery now, it's virtually like driving on ice. And at this late stage in the race, that Graham's tyres would be off and he's having difficulty holding it on. But then so's everybody else out there. I can't see us losing third place. I don't think we'll get any higher. There's only 15 or 13 laps to go now. I'm pretty sure that we'll hold that. We've done well from the back of the grid. This is the third time I've started off the back and come home third. So I think I'll ask to start there every time.
It's been a long, often disappointing and certainly expensive trail for you, hasn't it?
Oh, certainly. Not only have I only started 3 years ago racing, but this new car we've been planning from all that we've learned over the last 3 years, and it's taken 4 months of solid hard work. My thanks for that go to Ron Krause, who's built a magnificent car. It's actually a work of art, and in my opinion, probably the finest touring car racing in Australia today. It's been very expensive, but the proof is out there. It's going around and it's going around. We're running a 12A engine today. Instead of the 13B we intended to run, it's actually the engine out of my old car. I had to go to Canberra yesterday to get it out of my old car. The chap I sold it to from Swiss Motors kindly loaned it back to me. So I'm very pleased with that, and it's going well. When the 13B gets in, we might even go a little bit quicker.
You worked until 4 o'clock in the morning. You look remarkably fresh. Is that because of the success?
Possibly. The boys did most of the work. I sort of stand around and hand them cans of Coke. As soon as I pick up a spanner, they tell me to buzz off. So I try and do the other jobs around the place. But the work and the effort that the crew have put in really would have to be seen to be appreciated. And to my wife and to their wives who have put up with it for 4 long, hard months, I really have got to say thank you to my bank manager too.
Well, we're in the nervous stages of the race now. We'll let you, Peter McLeod, just watch and see how Graeme Bailey manages these last few laps. And in the meantime, it's back to you, Garry Wilkinson.
The nervous stages, 10 laps to... Oh, there are some very schmick-looking cars indeed, parked out in the midfield here at Amaroo Park today.
Especially, well, conversion jobs on RX7s. There's one that needs one. It's the Ron Dixon entry, the Barbecues Galore car. Little Eurocars display out there on the infield. No pun intended there for the Bob Stevens Ron Dixon car. Meanwhile, we go back to number 33, still running in the top 10, the old pro, Bo Seton, son Glenn Seton, teaming up today for the Silastic 300. And Dad and his boy, I hope to run together in the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst.
Well, there are only 2 3-litre cars. This one's in 8th place, in fact, the Setons. Only 2 3-litre cars still in the race at all, so they've done remarkably well to be in 8th spot at this stage. 3 laps down on race leader Jorge Fury.
Down to the lake corner, here comes Barry Seton up behind Barry Graeme and the 47 Brian Callaghan car through the corner. And one more lap completed with about 10 remaining of 155 in the Silastic 300 here today at Amaroo Park. And I dare say the champagne corks will be popping at the Nissan Turbo tent after the race is over.
I didn't mention the nervous time. I don't know that Howard Marsden's the type to get nervous, not with 8 laps to go, and a lap up on Peter Callaghan getting a little bit ragged around the edges there on that corner. Seton in pursuit. In fact, the race leader is not far behind them on the track at the moment, closing pretty quickly too, Jorge Fury.
Fury has really driven them all into the ground here today in the Turbo Nissan. There's Seton going through, coming down to corner by the lake, the right-hander, brings him up the short straightaway. Coming through Wonderlick turn, and one more lap completed. Barry Graeme, 47, and Barry Seton in number 33. 8 laps remain in the Silastic 300.
Jorge Fury may in fact go on to take the checkered flag here, but there is an award for the man of the meeting, and they've already decided who's got that. They've given it to Peter McLeod.
Oh, I thought Dick Johnson might have got it.
Well, he certainly put up a great performance, Dick, in the Alpha Series race. But McLeod, his car in 3rd place at the moment, having started from the rear of the grid after an overnight engine change, going back down to the smaller 12A engine. There's the car going through just in front of Seton, in fact, and about to take Callaghan going down into the lake corner. And it's been a mighty performance.
Yes, I will agree that Peter McLeod, a tremendous effort from the back of the field to bring the Mazda up to the top 3.
Graeme Bailey at the wheel of the McLeod RX7 at the present time, but as I said, they're 2 laps down on race leader Jorge Fury in car 55, the Nissan Turbo. That's him going through up Bitchapave Hill with 7 laps to go. Over the top into the glare of the afternoon winter sun.
He's driven magnificently, has done the solo effort. comes through onto the back part of the course, 55, running just as strongly as it was at the start of the race this afternoon. Down through the gears, into the bottom corner. So the final laps are coming up to the Silastic 300 and, of course, 55. Looking good at this stage. We'll take a break and return.
This wet grip test proves that Goodyear NCT offers more grip. These leading Australian and European steel radials, quite possibly the ones on your car, lost this much grip in the wet at 100 kilometres per hour. This print shows NCT steel's full width grip at the same speed.
More grip, more driver control. NCT steel, only from Goodyear.
I can't think of a better steel radial for your car.
Welcome back to the Silastic 300, and the Talamalmo Tiger is out there in front. George Fury in the 55 Nissan Turbo heading up to the top of Bitchapave Hill. So the farmer is putting one over the City Slickers here today.
The who Tiger?
The Talamalmo Tiger. That's where he comes from.
Oh, all right, you got me. Howard Marsden is smiling like the cat that swallowed the cream as we join him with Evan Green in the pits.
You've been slowing George down, have you, Howard?
Yes, we have. We're allowing Peter Brock to catch us on this lap, but of course we're still one whole lap ahead of Peter at this stage.
So the race is still under control?
Still under control. Very short distance to go now, but we're really obviously looking forward to this win because our second anniversary is Bathurst of this year, and this is our first major win. So we're really looking forward to this one.
Many people must have thought you were taking an enormous risk when you took a rally driver, George Fury, out of the rally car and put him in a race car.
Yes, we took a risk with George, we took a risk with turbocharging, and we've won, and it was hard work, but I think there'll be a few sore heads around the Nissan camp after tonight.
Well, we'll let you spend the last few moments watching your charge and making sure he gets the checkered flag while I return to Garry Wilkins.
Thank you very much, Evan. And 2 laps to go for George Fury in the Silastic 300 for 1983. And it's been a great performance. A great performance indeed. And although his teammate Freddie Gibson had some trouble, I think the turbos really, they've never been a problem. They've got a lot of stamina. The turbochargers sometimes are a little finicky. But since the Bluebird first ran at Bathurst in 1981, no fewer than 44 turbo units have snapped, crackled, and then popped. But if they ever get reliability in the turbos, and they're getting it slowly but surely, by gee, what a power they're going to be. Top 5 at this stage with 1 lap to go. Fury, Brock, McLeod, Finnegan, and Richards. Turbo Commodore, the Turbo Bluebird, Commodore, RX7, Commodore, and BMW. But remember, the leader has a lap on Peter Brock in 05, so he's doing it well.
Well, a magnificent effort for Howard Marsden and the Nissan team. Howard has been a strong supporter of the Australian Touring Car Championship this year. Has had George Fury at all the rounds, and they were ultra competitive. He's also been able to have a car here for all the rounds of the Better Brakes AMSCAR series. George Fury has returned to Amaroo after that bad accident last year. He's not that far away from probably the most important enduro win of his life in touring cars as he heads down into the lake corner for the final time, coming up towards the Wonderlick corner. So who's going to win at Bathurst? Only time will tell. Coming down the straightaway, the checkered flag is out, and George Fury goes on to take the Silastic 300 here this afternoon at Amaroo Park Raceway. A great win to George Fury. Second place will go to Peter Brock in the number 05 Dealer Team Commodore, and third place to the RX7 of Peter McLeod. Well, consistency, you can't beat it, and with the problems they've had throughout the year with turbochargers, a 300 kilometre, 155 lap enduro around Amaroo Park, and everything ran to perfection today for George Fury. The officials waving to him, the crowd waving and saluting a little fella who came up today trumps. Let's recap the placings for the Silastic 300 at Amaroo Park this afternoon. The winner, George Fury in the Nissan Turbo. Second place going to Peter Brock in the Marlboro Team Commodore. And third place going to Peter McLeod in the Slick RX7.
Well, You can't take it away from him. Shake of the fist. He doesn't get terribly emotional, Jorge Fury, but he's pretty happy about this one, as will the whole Nissan team be, after they've proven so quick at times.
He's done it on his own today. No co-driver required for Jorge Fury. Heading up to victory lane. Pulling in now, and I would think a delighted Jorge Fury, but an elated Howard Marsden. We'll wait now for Jorge Fury to step from the car. As you can see, the officials crowding around just out the front of our Channel 7 commentary position. Drivers pulling up behind. Peter Brock pulls in the 05 car, and Graeme Bailey will be the next one to move in the number 50 Slick RX7. Well, our commentators are moving in for the presentation to the place getters. We'll take a break and then be back for the words of wisdom from the winner of the Silastic 300.
If you're going to win, win big. That seems to be Jorge Fury's policy. Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Big effort. I notice you're cramping up a little bit, George.
Just a bit stiff in the back. 155 laps to be thrown around is a little bit arduous, but it's not too bad. I didn't think about it during the race.
I know it's a long time to think back, but the first hectic laps, you were content just to let the dogfight go on up in front of you?
Yes, we Howard and I had a talk about it before the race, and we decided not to fight it out early on. And even as it was, our tyres went off a bit early, and we had to do an early pit stop, but we were able to look after them towards the end.
You had no trouble at all, as Freddie Gibson had with the turbo?
Well, I don't know what trouble he had. I haven't talked to him yet, but no trouble.
Well, sufficient to put him out, but you had no trouble.
In any case, I'd like to thank the boys for putting up such a big effort. I think it's been a long time coming for us to win a big race, and we've done it now, and congratulations to all the boys.
You had nearly a lap up your sleeve at the finish. Now, just how easy were you taking it in the concluding stages to conserve the car?
To be honest, very easily, yes. I know I could see Brocky coming up, but I knew I had an extra lap as well, so there was no pressure at all.
Well, it's been a great victory in the inaugural Silastic 300 here at Amaroo Park. Bernie McMahon is here, Managing Director of Dow Corning, to make the presentation of the trophy.
Thank you, Garry. Well, George, it's really a great pleasure for me to be back. I've been in the United States, as you know, for the last 4 years, and to be back here and in the inaugural version of the Silastic 300 after being out of motorsport 4 years. It's great to be here and see you win so comfortably and put on a great show for us today. I think Ivan's going to look after the Czech side of things for you, and I'm going to have great pleasure in presenting you with this inaugural trophy with a bottle of champagne to celebrate for it this evening. And I'd like to wish you all the very best, and I hope you go on to better things, George.
Thanks very much. I'm glad you came back from America without an American accent.
Congratulations to Jorge Fury, winner of the Silastic 300. Not one bottle, but two. And I think he's looking a little hot and bothered. He could probably manage to down one of those now, I think
he looks like it now. One for tonight too, George.
OK, as long as you don't spray it over me, George, you can go for your life. Yep. A great effort. Jorge Fury sharing the spoils with the crowd. Thank you, George. Peter Brock, if we can get you up here, second place getter in this year's race. Of course, all the cars finishing behind George in the Nissan Turbo. All the other cars in the field having to contend, of course, with new equipment under new regulations. How did it pan out for you? I mean, a lap down, obviously, but from the mid-stages on, you seem to be content to use it as a trial.
Well, that's certainly correct. We started off sort of trying to run at the pace that George, etc., were running at, and there was obviously a bit of homework needed to be done with chassis tuning to suit Amaroo as well as to suit the new regulations. So I found myself falling off the pace, and I had a quick change of plans and thought, right, I'll come in early, give Larry a third of the race, and I'll finish off and do the last third. So it was good training for the co-drivers and the pit crew.
Larry, I know you do a lot of the work on the car. What work is there now, between now and the next round, to get the dealer team Commodores right on the pace?
Well, because it's a different circuit, Sandown and Bathurst, we probably go into it better prepared anyway, but there's not much work. It all finished in good shape, and just got to do our normal tuning now for those two particular circuits.
The only RX7 to complete the field started from the rear of the grid, the Slick 50 RX7, Peter McLeod and the Chicken Man, Graeme Bailey. Congratulations, fellas. Big effort.
Thanks very much. Very pleasing to be here. We've started from the back of the grid once before, and we came home third, so it's becoming a bit of a habit. It's very pleasing, mate.
Graeme, I think you had an armchair ride. Peter did the hard work starting from the rear of the grid.
Yes, he did the easy part. I just did the afternoon stint into the sun.
By the look of Graeme there, I think he's been doing a bit of work too. It was a good effort right round. The team were tremendous. That's only here on today. If you can see the effort that's gone into that car up till now for the last 4 months, you'd realise why it went so well. It's a superb car, and it's only going to get better from here. It turned a wheel on Friday, and that was all.
Peter McLeod in the RX7, third place getter in the Silastic 300 at Amaroo Park for 1983. Second, 05 Peter Brock, the dealer team Commodore. The winner, car 55, Jorge Fury in the Nissan Turbo. For Channel 7 viewers, we'll take a break and return with more action at Amaroo Park.
The Silastic 300 was brought to you by Dow Corning, manufacturers of Silastic gaskets and Dow Corning silicone brake fluid.